Commissioner Keller, can you hear us here in chambers?
I can now.
Perfect, thank you.
Quick question, Andrew, did Commissioner Gray make it on Zoom or not?
Commissioner Gray will not be able to make Zoom today.
Okay, that was my understanding, but I was just checking. Okay, it looks like it's 9 o'clock. I'm going to call to order the Lyon County Board of County Commissioners. This is Thursday, November 17th, 2022. Action will be taken on all items unless otherwise noted. No action will be taken on any item until it's properly agendized. To avoid meeting disruptions, please place your cell phones and beepers in a silent mode or turn them off during the meeting. The board reserves the right to take items in a different order to accomplish business in the most efficient manner. Items may be combined for consideration and items may be pulled or removed from the agenda at any time. Restrictions on comments by the general public. Any such restrictions must be reasonable and may restrict the time, place, and manner of the comments, but may not restrict comments based upon viewpoint. Board of Commissioners convening as other boards. Members of the Board of County Commissioners also serve as the Liquor Board, Central Lyon Vector Control District Board, Mason Valley Mosquito Abatement District Board, Walker River Weed Control District Board, Willow Creek General Improvement District Board, the Silver Springs General Improvement District Board, and during this meeting may convene as any of those boards as indicated on this or a separately posted agenda. Please note that this meeting could break for lunch somewhere between 11:30 and 1:30. Roll call, please note that I have Commissioner Jacobson, Commissioner Hockaday, and where did Commissioner Henderson go?
It looks like he stepped out for a second.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, I could have swore I saw him and he's not there. All right. Please note that we have Commissioner Jacobson, Commissioner Hockaday in chambers. Commissioner Henderson, I am assuming he's going to resume with us, and that I myself, Commissioner Keller, is on Zoom. At this time, we're going to turn to the invocation that will be given by Thomas Walburn of the Sweetwater Christian Fellowship, followed by the pledge. And if I could please ask Commissioner Hockaday after the invocation, if he could please lead us in that pledge.
Let us be an attitude of prayer. Now today, Lord, we come in an attitude of forgiveness, ask for repentance, and ask for again for your grace. We've just come through a rough and tumble election, dear God, and it seems like more people are interested in tearing each other apart than offering solutions. Lord, our nation was founded on your strength, on Christian Judeo principles. Help us get back to those proven principles and help us once more become one nation under God. To do that requires for each and every person, not only in this room, but in our nation, to turn to you, dear God. This morning, I'd ask that you anoint these duly elected officials so that when they carry out the duties given to them by you, that they may do so in such a way that will honor you. Be with our sheriff's department, our firemen and women, and all first responders. Lord, keep them safe. And Lord, help us to come to understand that this nation cannot be healed unless we directly call upon you. For you are the foundation of this nation, that this nation was built on. And so, Lord, today we give you the glory and just ask you, dear Jesus, to be with this committee today, this commission. Pray this, dear God, in your holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me in the pledge. Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Please take your seats. Okay, at this time is when we turn to public participation. No action will be taken on any item until it's properly agendized. It is anticipated that public participation will be held at this time, though it may be returned to at any time during the agenda. Citizens wishing to speak during public participation are asked to state their name for the record and will be limited to 3 minutes. The board will conduct public comment after discussion of each agenda action item, but before the board takes any action. Afterwards, please print your name at the clerk's desk, and I ask if you are on Zoom, please spell your name for the clerk. So do we have anybody for public participation at this time that's not on the agenda? I'm not seeing any hands on Zoom.
There's one here in chambers.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Leslie Sonnet from Smith. I would like item 16.9 for possible action to approve a master services agreement amendment number 1 to extend the contract with Resource Concepts Incorporated removed from the consent agenda and table to be discussed as a separate item if applicable at a later time. My request is based on the discussion at the September 15, 2022 BOCC meeting, where the former county manager gave us all an update on the
Okay, I'm going to stop you right there. This is public participation for anything that's not on the agenda. We have noted your request to pull the item, and that will be honored. But if you want to speak on the item, you will have to wait until it's pulled.
Okay, I'm sorry. I did ask if I hadn't submitted comments on this item already when to speak and was told this was the appropriate time, so I apologize.
That's fine. Yeah, this is public participation for anything that's not on the agenda. So, but I do note your request, and when we get to that item, feel free to get up again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's another comment in chambers.
Okay,
Madam
please
Chair.
state your name.
Good morning. For the record, Jeremy Drew, Principal Resource Specialist with Resource Concepts Incorporated. I know we'll be up a couple more times on the agenda, but I did have one item while I'm here today to bring to your attention. Resource Concepts has been retained by the Nevada Division of Forestry to help with a countywide update of the Community Wildfire Protection Plan. This is a statewide project that we did back in 2004. The grant will actually allow, or the update, excuse me, will actually allow access to future projects for fire reduction, particularly in the WUI areas. So I felt it was important while I was here today to give the board that update. I know Chief Nightingale's here today, and I think we already have an email into him to coordinate. NDF has actually already done some of the initial community assessment. We want to reach out to each of the fire districts and vet that and talk to them about priority projects going forward. And we're setting up those visits with the chiefs now. When we get into 2023, we'll be looking at community involvement and engagement through communities in each of the fire districts. And we'll be back to this board to give you a more formal update as to where we're at and where we're going. But I felt while I was here today, it'd be important to give you a quick update. And I look forward to seeing you all in early 2023. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Do we have anybody else? I see a hand waving, Mr. Kittinger.
Thank you. James Kenninger, resident of Smith Valley. I would have liked to have been there in person this morning, but our rescue dog, which we picked up from the Urington shelter 2 weeks ago, is in the moment of giving birth. We have 5 puppies on board this morning so far. So that's a good note. But I would like to ask this board to totally reconsider the idea of being engaged in a lands bill with Hud Bay Mining. If we can't,
Mr. Kittinger, this is public participation for anything that's not on the agenda. That is
Right,
actually a
and-
presentation, and I will take public comment at the time of the presentation.
oh, well, I didn't see that on the on the agenda. Thank you very much. I'm glad to hear that. I'll stick
Yes,
around.
so, yeah, so please bear with us. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so do I have anybody else for public participation that's not on the agenda?
The puppies were not on the agenda.
I'm sorry, I don't know who that was. Okay, Andrew, I'm not, or I only have a,
Sorry, I don't see anyone else in chambers.
thank you.
Anyone on Zoom.
Yeah, you got to be my eyes sometimes. All right, so I'm going to move on to number 5 for possible action, review and adoption of the agenda. Other than the item that was noted that comes later on the consent agenda, is there any changes to the agenda that you know of, Andrew?
None that I'm aware of.
Okay, can I get a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to accept the agenda as listed on the on our sheet.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Public comment? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, we have a couple of time certains to kick off the morning, it looks like. We got our first one at 9 a.m. Presentation and update from Bureau of Land Management, update of projects in Lyon County, and a fire update from our fire management officer.
Good morning, Kim Dow for the record. Thank you for your time this morning, commissioners. We appreciate the opportunity to come and provide updates on a quarterly basis. And of course, if you want something more frequent, we're happy to oblige that as well. So I provided in advance, just for your reading pleasure, an update on all of our projects. I wasn't going to spend time going through each one today unless you'd like me to, since we wanted to have most of our time for a presentation on fire and fuels. So I did provide that. If you have any questions on that, I'm happy to answer any questions about any of the projects. I also wanted to let you know about some personnel shifts that we've had in our office. So when I last updated you, I was the Sierra Front Field Manager in the Carson City District. And since that time, I've taken a new position as the District Manager for the Carson City District. So I'm still in the same office, but I'm now the District Manager. The field office position is vacant at this time. We do have an acting field manager for 4 months. His name is Brady Owens. He was unable to make it here today, and we'll be looking to permanently fill that position behind me over the next couple of months. I'm hoping to have someone in place by the beginning of the new year. That might be a bit ambitious, but that's my goal. So that's our personnel update. If you don't have any questions for me, I'd like to turn it over to Jonathan Palma, who is our fire management officer, and he's going to give the presentation on our fire and fuels program. Before I do that, are there any questions for me? Okay, thank you.
All right, sounds good. Well, I'm Jonathan Palma. I'm the FMO, Fire Management Officer for the Carson City BLM. If you would like handouts of the slides, there's some here. So feel free to grab those. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview of our program and just kind of our fire and fuels. So next slide real quick. Okay, so just a real quick overview of what our program has. So we do have 9 Type 3 engines. 1 interagency hotshot crew, one air tanker base that's based in Stead, and then air attack platform, 2 seats, which are single engine air tankers that we have at Stead, and then an on-call Type 2 crew, and then also an on-call camp crew. And those help nationally, just as the situation dictates. Those resources are spread out throughout our district. I'm sure you're well aware the BLM is a very large district between in the Carson City. So our resources are primarily in Carson City, Cold Springs, and then also Palomino Valley or Warm Springs north of Reno. So that's where they're at. We do on when we have lightning predicted or, different situations that cause high fire potential, we do move resources into other areas to be closer to responses, or we bring resources in from other parts of the Great Basin, from Utah or Idaho, to help us beef up our resources for expected large fire. Next slide. Oh, yeah, thank you very much. So this is just a quick overview of, and I tried to tailor it more, kind of focusing on Lyon County here. But this is just an overview of the BLM fire occurrence from 2002 to 2021. And we've got years all over the board, right? And I'm sure you guys are all aware of that. Some of our highest years, so 2016, we didn't have that many fires. We only had 28 fires, but we burned 74,400 acres. And that all pretty much came on 3 days that year. Just that there was a really hot summer. We didn't really have a lot of fires until one lightning storm, and that one lightning storm lit a lot of fires all at once. So that was kind of one of our larger years. And then I'm sure just looking at that. So other large years were 17 and 20. 2012, and I'll get into that here in a little bit as well, kind of what that means. It also at the bottom of that graph shows what months we have the most fires. So if you look here, most of our fires are May over to September. There's a few in those outskirt months, but primarily, we know when the seasons are. So that's for BLM. And when I say BLM fires, that's where the fires started. So the next slide is going to be Lyon County fires. So that's when fires that we have record of that started on Lyon County. And I will put a caveat in here that, I don't have your records. So any of your fire department, Lyon, North Central Lyon, North Lyon, Smith Valley, Mason Valley, I don't have any of those records. So I don't have those on here. I just have what went through our dispatch center. So I know these are not every fire that's been in Lyon County for sure. But from our records, you've had since 16, I've got records going back to 16, 26 fires for 4,300 acres. And then primarily looks like, that May, June timeframes when most of those fires happen. And a lot of them are in the Central Lyon Fire Protection District. So that's where those ones primarily tend to be. And actually, like, you look at, we actually have no records for us. I'm sure, I know Mason Valley has fires, but as far as stuff that went through our dispatch center, there's been nothing in our history going back to 16 that has been run through our dispatch center. So I told you that we'd be looking at those years that we have big years that we talked about. So if you look here, this is the drought monitor. So the more it's white, the less we're in drought. The redder it is, the more the droutier, whatever you want to say, then the more we're in drought. And so the black boxes on here are actually those years that I was talking about that we had a lot of fires and a lot of acres. And so something that most people don't usually expect is that we actually have more fires and more acres burned when we don't have drought. And so the primary reason for that is in our area, we get a lot of grass growth on those years. It's rain, snow, all that stuff. So those are the years that we had a lot of rain, a lot of snow, and grew a lot of grass. And that's when we primarily get a lot of our fires. Not that we don't get a lot of fires. The Forest Service is a little different. They have fires on those drought years, but we typically don't get the large fires like that. So with that, what would this season coming? So I know this presentation was supposed to happen a while ago, but if I'm looking to 2023, I don't know for sure what's going to happen. It's pretty early in the water year to know. But obviously we've been getting, good early snow. It's kind of shut off right now, but if we do continue to get that snow, I would expect, something like that 2016, 17 timeframe for fire. That's just, an early prediction. That's really, really early, but we don't know what the rest of the water years could bring. So I kind of went over some of this. So, we primarily staff for our fire season, May to September. We bring people on in April, March timeframe to get ready, and then we're fully staffed by May through September. And I know a lot of people talk about, fire season all year round. Kind of like I was showing, we don't have a major, at least BLM wise. We don't have a lot of fires on those outskirts, but what we do is we do staff, we have employees that are staffed year round. So all of our engine captains work year round. So we're able to staff at least like 2 to 3 engines all year round and respond on those outskirts out of the normal season. So, and with that, in the future, as we get more funding, or if we get more funding, we do plan on, making more people permanent, and then we have more engines to help respond locally, and not only locally, but nationally. There's been a lot of stuff happen nationally that we need to help respond to in those kind of off seasons. And most of you are from the area. Well, you're all from the area. But you know that we've had those the Collin Ranch fires, in Washoe County. Even Bridgeport a few years ago had a fire in February. We get those cold fronts that come through in the wintertime. If we have a dry winter, there's still fuel, and we end up, helping out with those fires as well. So we know there's that, especially this area, we get a lot of those. As far as next fire season staffing, we plan on having the same amount of staffing as we've had, and then, like I said, we're still waiting for the rest of the water year to come in, but that's kind of my early prediction on what's going to happen. So moving into fuels. So our fuels program, last year we completed 11,000 acres of fuels treatments, and this is in the entire Carson City district. We have been involved. There's a new Sierra Front Fuels Collaborative group that meets to discuss fuels projects. Sometimes you can get going on fuels projects, and there's private, BLM, Forest Service, Central Lyon, Smith Valley, there's all these different agencies involved. And sometimes you get them these blocks done where there's somebody in the middle didn't get stuff done, or it doesn't connect. And so we're really trying to make sure that when we're doing projects, all these agencies, not just us, that we're talking about these projects and making sure that they connect and that they're good fuel breaks, fuels treatments for the entire community. And so that's been a really good thing. I think a lot of that's headed up by NV Energy, because NV Energy has really put some funding out there for fire districts to hire employees and do these fuel treatments, primarily around their NV Energy lines, but we've been able to work on some other stuff that's not along those lines as well. We did buy a new masticator, which is what that's a picture of. So we're going to start doing some treatments in-house. And so that's going to be, that's a learning curve this year. We got a lot of people getting trained on that, and they're doing a project right now just so they can get time running that equipment and figuring out how to work it moving into the future. Here is, so most of our fuels projects have been in the Pine Nuts, the North Pine Nuts for Lyon County. Southern Lyon County, you get into Forest Service, they've got a lot of fuels projects down in Southern Lyon County. So that I didn't pull up their map, but this is ours. So most of ours are down there. So so most of them are up in the hills. That's primarily because we were on a push for bi-state sage grouse, primarily through a lot of the 2000s. So that's a lot of it's to help save that habitat, but it does have an effect on making sure fires don't get as large in the county as well. We do have, there are some fuels treatments back behind some community down there on that very western side of Lyon County. But that's stuff that I think we can talk with the fire districts about and see if we can do some more of those kind of treatments. As far as treatments go, this is the acres completed in Lyon County by year. And so 2016 was a big year. We had over 6,000 acres treated. And then 2020, we've had, I can't remember, it was right around 600 or so, but a lot of those are good treatments, and then we'll continue to do them. So now we're kind of in a maintenance situation, but and starting to focus on other treatments as well. I think the next one that we're looking at would be the 6 Mile Canyon one, kind of moving more. Right now it's all in Story County, but hopefully moving into Lyon County off of that one as well. And then these are the type of projects we've been doing. A little bit of mastication, not much. We'd like to get more done now that we have one. And then lop and scatter has been primarily what we've been doing, and then that's where you just go in and there's like juniper, PJ, or pinyon and juniper, and go in and just kind of cut them down and limb them up and scatter them, so. And that's primarily for the sage grouse habitat, and then the pile burning, so we do a little bit of pile burning as well out there. Moving into the future, we do have a new field supervisor that starts Monday, so that was vacant, but I'm glad to have him coming on. And that'll be great to have him here, and have hired 2 additional positions besides him to increase capacity and hopefully get more fuels treatments done. So that will help there. And then continue, like I said, we were learning how to use this new masticator. And I think by next year we'll be able to really get out and do a lot more projects, especially around communities, stuff like that. And then we'll continue to be an active part of the Sierra Front Fuels Collaborative to work with all the agencies and work together on some of these projects. Appreciate your time, and if there's any questions or anything, feel free to ask.
Do we have any questions?
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I guess, question, what part or what would a typical reseeding program look like from BLM standpoint after a fire? Or I guess I'm just curious.
Or reseeding?
Yes.
Yeah, so reseeding, so that falls under our emergency stabilization program. And so what happens there is a group in the field offices that get together. They talk about, they have to come up with a plan. They have 21 days to get that plan done. And that'll have, whether they want to reseed, if there's anything needs repaired, all that stuff. They put it together, we submit the plan, we'll get funding, and then we'll implement that plan during the winter time usually. We have 3 years after that to get that.
That's all I have, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know in the past it's been cost prohibitive to do any biomass recycling. Is that still the case, or is the cost come down? Is there any possibility of actually recycling some of these trees that you're cutting down now? Are they just lopped and scattered and left to rot?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I have not been involved in any biomass projects at all. So I could look into it, but yeah, I do not know at this time.
Okay, thank you. I saw in the past it was too cost prohibitive to move the waste product to a facility to be recycled. I was just hoping and wondering if the cost had come down any.
Right.
Yeah.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Hockaday.
looking at the photograph of one masticator,
Yeah.
it seems like you have a lot of property to take care of. Are we planning on buying more of those? Or about how much land can you cover with one masticator?
Oh, that's a fair question. So yeah, we don't have much, but I think where that Fuels Collaborative comes in, there's been multiple masticators purchased by other agencies, and that's what I think one of the good things, we can combine our efforts and hopefully, yes, we have one, but they have one and they have one and they have one. When you add them all up, there's a few of them that we have.
I know you have a lot of property out there with BLM, so
Yes.
a lot of work. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the update and presentation today. Appreciate you coming out.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, I have a hand, well, that's public participation. So, Mr. Kenninger, did you have a comment?
Yes, Madam Chair. I would just like to point out that in 2011, October the 1st, we had a lightning strike fire here in Smith Valley. And because we did fuel reduction within the few months prior to that, extensive fuel reduction in cooperation with the Conservation District with federal funding, we averted having our community burned out. We were used as the poster child for fuel reduction because the fire happened so fast afterwards and it stayed all on BLM land. And so I'm really behind fuel reduction. I was the co-chair of the Fire Safe Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kenninger. Okay, Andrew, I know we have a 9:15, but we also have the Board of Health at 9:30. Is Dr. Titus available yet, or can I do the 9:15 and then move on.
Dr. Titus is in chambers.
Oh, she is.
Yes.
Okay. So because of that, I'm gonna go ahead and jump to recess to reconvene as the Board of Health. And Dr. Titus, if you want to use my chair to chair the meeting.
Well, thank you, everybody. I'm going to call this meeting of the Lyon County Board of Health to order. We will first, do we need to take roll call again for this one, or are we good to go?
We should be good to go on that. So you could probably just start off with your public participation.
Excellent. Thank you. So with that, thank you, Chair. I'll go ahead and call the public participation for anything that's not on this agenda item. No action will be taken on any item until it's properly agendized. It is anticipated that public participation will be held at this time. It can be returned to any time during the agenda. Citizens wishing to speak during public participation are asked to state their name for the record and will be limited to 3 minutes. The board will conduct public comment after discussion of each agenda item, action item, but before the board takes any action. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Shayla Holmes, who for possible action approved Lyon County Human Services opioid needs assessment. And Shayla will be doing the presentation.
Madam Chair, I believe you do need to note that the sheriff is not present.
Thank you, sir. And we'll so note.
Thank you, Andrew. I didn't realize he was not back there.
Good morning, Shayla Holmes, Director, Lyon County Human Services, for the record. I have to apologize. The original plan was to have the Board of Health approve this needs assessment prior to the Board of County Commissioners approving the opioid litigation plan in the first year of funding. So we're doing this a little bit backwards than what we originally intended, as you guys have already approved the first year funding and that plan. But this will provide some background information as to how we got to that plan, and then additional information as far as future recommendations, as that first year funding will not quite solve this problem. So I just want to note that opioids and substance misuse has been around since perhaps the beginning of written history, and we haven't quite found the solution yet, hence the work and millions of dollars being spent towards combating the issue. Some may say that the majority of wicked problems within society are stemming from substance misuse and abuse. And it's important to realize that it's the entire community that is impacted by substance use and the opioid epidemic. It's not just the individual that's suffering from that, it's their family, it's the workplace, it's the community, it's all of the service providers that you see in that big orange circle. Everybody's impacted, and everybody has a role in how we combat the issue in regards to prevention and also in treatment. So all of these sectors have representation when it comes to this needs assessment and compiling the data and conducting the community research or having their input. There was representation from all of these sectors within that, because they all have a voice and a role to play within it. So not having the easy button answer, we look to research on how to prevent and address the issue. A critical thing to keep in mind is that data is a problem. It's different across sectors. The language isn't universal. It's not housed in easily accessible manners or being able to be pulled and analyzed in ways that are relevant to opioids specifically. Some cases it is, some cases it isn't. Being a rural county, some areas it's not statistically significant to produce information for just our population. So you'll see a lot of information frequently brought up to a regional data pool. And not to say that one death isn't something to be worried about. In OD maps, which is one of the data systems of which opioid misuse and abuse is available. The pitfalls for our OD mapping right now is that only our Mason Valley and Smith Valley fire districts input data in a way that will extract to OD mapping. So Central Lyon Fire, North Lyon Fire, however they input their data, it does not appear within OD maps. So within OD maps, and you can use this as perhaps a reference, that within just this calendar year alone, January to November right now, there's been 18 overdoses and 1 death. So if we look at just these numbers, we miss the opportunity to prevent. And so I heavily recommend that we use data that's available for not just misuse, but also the known risk factors for opioid misuse. And here's a list of the high risk factors. So pain scale and current illicit use. So our medical practitioners have assessments that they utilize when it comes to identifying pain scale and individuals that are at risk for misuse when they're doing those prescriptions. But when we look at the other pieces, as far as where the community has impact, mental health disorders are also a risk factor, age. Our seniors are particularly at risk, and that's mainly due to that pain factor and prescriptions. Our ages 16 to 45 are more likely to form misuse. Personal and family history of substance use is a huge risk factor. Being involved with the criminal justice system, being a victim, and also adverse childhood events. I don't think any of these things are probably novel to consider that these lead to substance misuse and particularly opioid misuse. So you guys have the draft report in front of you. I don't want to go page by page. I just want to highlight some pieces of that data. The adult issues for the region, those that you see in regards to the risk factors as far as mental health or individuals that utilize illegal drugs, these are a part of that regional data pool. If you were to just, because these surveys are conducted voluntarily, you don't really get a wide scoping way to identify how many individuals in Lyon County have a mental health disorder. So if we were to just look at Lyon County, those numbers would be very small. So they pull it up into a region. And what you can see here is that over time, since 2011, while it's not got that high curve like our illegal drug use does, you do see an increase in individuals that are having issues or poor mental health days that are impacting their ability to engage in the community. For our youth issues, what I really want to highlight, so you'll see across, and I tried to separate this by high school and middle school, they conduct a youth risk behavior survey. Lyon County is an opt-in, so parents have to say, yes, my kid can do this. I think they're working on changing us to an opt-out. So parents have to be involved in making the decision to allow their youth to do this, and it's voluntary. And there's a different one for high school and for middle school. We don't look at our elementary school students utilizing the same data and what you will see is 2015, the middle school weren't asked this question on the ACEs. But what is important, I think, to consider, for one, our high schoolers continue to have some concerns there, but they're pretty steady. Our middle schoolers across the board on these data sets are showing increasing trends. So our littler folks, or our middle-aged folks, not our little ones, are showing increased risks for substance use. I think importantly, also, particularly on the opioid front, in opioid use, our middle schoolers have had a steady increase in their comfortability with prescriptions and prescription use. And that's a huge thing, I think, to consider when we're talking about prevention and how we address that. This we've talked about on a variety of different ways. You guys hear about this when we talk about child abuse prevention. It is unfortunate, but drug use is a reason why youth are removed from the home. And while the reports are going down in regards to drug use of parents in regards to DCFS removals, the removals due to substance use are going up. So really what that's telling us is that while the reports might be going down, the reports they're getting are far more severe and significant of a drug use problem that says they can't properly care for their children in a way that's significant that they need to be removed. Family history tells us that that's a risk factor. So all those kiddos within that rising graph there have that check, right? Also an adverse childhood event check, they've got that too. And it's traumatic being removed from your home. So they've got a lot of things going against them for those kiddos being removed. Switching over to some of the hospital data, the age graph is a little crazy, and I apologize for that. It's the way they break down all those different sectors. But what's important to note there is that 55 up has an increase since 2010 as far as inpatient admissions go, and the 25 to 34 age range also. And then over on that hospital inpatient admissions has been on a steady incline since 2010 as well. That orange line, I apologize, didn't pull in on that graph, is emergency room encounters, and that seems to be pretty steady. So Lyon County opioid deaths, like I said, the data is a little bit off in regards to how current it is. But one thing to note is that synthetic piece is making a rise back up in 2021. That's what that NSS is. Heroin seems to be going down, but it's all still considered an opioid. So that NSS is like a fentanyl blend, not necessarily fentanyl pills, but you also see in the blue, the fentanyl is rising, which I don't think is, you see it all over the news, and it's no different for us as well. In talking with our sheriff's department and asking them to help me figure out our arrest rates, as you guys can see with that, heroin is prevalent in Lyon County. So as far as 2019, I think is as early as they could get me that information. So you do see heroin is here, but you do start to see a rise in fentanyl pills as they started collecting that data. And for 2022, this was relevant as of June. So if you were to double that number, we'll definitely go over the 2021 amount. So I'm going to switch gears in regards to who was present for that Lyon County Opioid Summit in 2019. So all of that data tells us that we've got some issues in regards to prevention, and we do have an opioid issue within Lyon County. Back in 2019, using funds from the HRSA Resilient 8 grant, we conducted a community-based summit where we brought together individuals from a variety of different sectors. You can see the list, it's also in your draft report. And we had individuals with lived experience present on how they got to that point and what helped them get through treatment. We had treatment providers present. We had the sheriff's department present. We had a variety of different presenters early in the morning, and then in the afternoon, we did a workshop as far as what does the community need, want, and see as far as what would good look like for Lyon County if we were to be able to solve our substance use issue, particularly around opioids. So that's where all of those recommendations came from. So we're not just starting now in regards to what we can do as far as opioid misuse. Since 2019, we've been working on a lot of different things that came from that, such as targeted naloxone distribution. Our EMS has become more aware. Our law enforcement has become more aware. They've increased their training in both of those sectors and the PPE that they use. We've got social workers embedded in some of our schools, which is a huge win. Not all of them, but they're working towards that. We've got crisis intervention team training that happens. And we also have our parent project class, which is evidence informed for high-risk youth, for parents to be able to help stop and reduce those risky behaviors of youth that are most at risk for utilizing substances. Some other things that have been in place since before that opioid summit, starting back in 2016, was our 2017, Fast and Most. And so you can see that Fast and Most do engage with individuals that have substance use disorder. And as you guys know from that approved opioid funding, our goal was to really increase our most, as that was something that was requested through the summit. And then also shown by data that we do have a significant touch with individuals with substance use disorder within that team. I talked about quite a bit of these over, so I'm going to go forward, I'm going to come backwards. So a big gap in regards to most is that our youth are not involved in that group right now. So part of what you guys approved with that funding is that we'll hopefully be able to expand most to have a youth team and be able to have some more targeted response to our seniors, who not only have our highest utilization rate of opioids, but they also have our highest utilization rate of the most team. So I think there's some strong correlation there. But I've already talked about the overarching issues as far as data. Fentanyl's increasing. The workforce is difficult to hire, particularly in those higher skilled areas. We do lack a robust prevention programming, particularly for our youth and spanning the whole age group, 0 to 18. We have very little that we do for our littles. And then, as you can see, our middle schoolers really need some heavy prevention education within there as well. Treatment options are also not readily available. We have no inpatient treatment services within Lyon County. Not for adults, at least. We do have WINRIC, but you have to be just as involved to get into that as a youth. And then we lack some robust transportation systems. We've increased transportation since 2019. So we now have 2 transportation buses to get out, but that's really not that on the spot transportation to get to where you need to go. If you're ready to get into treatment, you really need to have a bed open right now, and you need to have a way to get there. So what you guys have as far as your recommendations, I think there are pages 18 to 21. 2 to 3 pages of recommendations came from that workshop in 2019, and all addressing the gaps and issues that we see here. So you guys already approved the first most highest priority from that, which is to allow us to start increasing our behavioral health supports within Lyon County and start expanding that most team. But as you can see, there is a lot more work to be done post that. Perhaps I should have started this presentation with this needs assessment is critical for us to have in regards to being able to access state funding, which is why I would love to have our Board of Health provide input and approve our needs assessment. So that way we can stand behind it as a solid document as far as what Lyon County needs going forward with additional funding coming in through a variety of resources.
Great, thank you. Any questions?
Just
Commissioner Hockaday?
first, FAST and MOST. I'm sure a lot of people in the audience aren't familiar with those acronyms. And second, do we have any idea why we're having such an increase in prescription drugs for our kids?
So FAST, Forensic Assessment Services Triage Team, it's a mouthful, but those are the individuals that, that's the program that aids individuals coming out of jail back into the community with the hope to help them not recidivate. So getting them connected to the community resources, behavioral health, substance use, whatever that might be, to help address what core problem got them in jail in the first place. MOST, Mobile Outreach Safety Team, which is the behavioral health response through dispatch, that when a community member or individual is experiencing a behavioral health crisis, they can call dispatch and the MOST team will be sent out, and a way to divert individuals from our hospitals and from our jails and getting them connected to the appropriate resources to really address those issues. In regards to our youth having access to prescription pills, I have no concrete data to come back to except for what we see anecdotally, which is the housing crisis is definitely causing families to pair up. We have a lot more multi-generational families. So while we have a lot of prescriptions licitly provided to our seniors, it's a way of a quality of life for them. But now we have a lot more of our older adults living with our younger kiddos, which provides access. Some of the things that we've done thus far is we do have lock boxes available when we come in contact with older adults in our screening. If we identify that they have opioids in the home, we try to get them lock boxes so they can keep it safe. We have other things that we do too, like timer caps, so that way they don't accidentally overdose because they've forgotten they've already dosed themselves. We have naloxone. Any home that has an opioid in it should have naloxone. But that is the best reasoning that we have, is that we have more and more people living together in multifamily homes, which is increasing that access. I think part of it is also education. When you have older adults or parents, adults aged 18 to 64 with a prescription in the home, educating them that it needs to be kept away from kiddos. It needs to be locked up. It can't just be in the medicine cabinet. When we have youth being left alone, particularly 12 to 17, right? At that point in time, a lot of them stop attending our Boys and Girls Club. They start going directly home, and they're there for a period of time without adult supervision. There's just a variety of different factors that come into play there, but I think education in the multifamily homes is definitely part of it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Jacobson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Shayla, for the presentation. Quick question on page 14 on our handout. You had a you had a graph that better explained this to me, and it's under the impacts of opioid use. The second sentence there also continues to be increasing rate of children removed to foster care due to parental drug use, up from 36.4% in 2019 to 53.9% in 2021. The percentages are great. I mean, not great as far as, but it makes it seem rather large, yes, but how many kids are we talking about there?
I'd have to go back and look at that specific report that it was pulled from. I don't want to misquote the exact number, so I'll have to.
Okay. Because I mean, it could be going from 2 kids to, I guess, 5 or whatever, but all right. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? I have a couple actually, Shayla. In your opening statement, you mentioned that for the data input, and if anybody knows me, they know that I love accurate data. And so you mentioned that the Smith Valley Fire District and the Mason Valley Fire District have, when they input their run reports, they have a component of that acknowledges whether there is opiates involved or not. Why doesn't Central Lyon and Northern Lyon have that same?
So I'm not quite sure yet. It's high on my list. I just recently gained access through the Attorney General's office to OD maps. They worked through that with me within the last 60 days to get me access to that. From what I understand, so our fire districts don't actually input directly into OD maps. So I'm not sure what the initials API stand for. Julia Peak may be in this audience. One of these fine ladies over here might know what that means. But from what Terry Kearns of the Attorney General's office has shared with me is that they have funding because there was quite some resistance from a variety of different partners in having to input additionally into OD mapping while they're on a call. They've got more important stuff to do. So they've got some back end technology piece that pulls this data from their system. So it's not real time. It is a little bit delayed. And whatever it is that they input to, there's certain check boxes that trigger into OD mapping. So they're checking something different out here than what they're checking in the rest of the county. So I have more research and more digging to do there. It's not necessarily, they're not inputting data. It's just whatever is pulling it on the back end and connecting these systems has a flaw in it, or we have a flaw in what boxes we're checking to get there.
So Julia Peak just walked back in. I hate to put her on the spot hot seat here, but can you ask her that question?
Do you know, in OD mapping, I believe it's called API is what they is the back end connecting piece. And I don't know what API stands for. Do you? I don't find out. Yeah, I'm like, it's, you know, it's one of those things where I didn't get too far into the weeds. I just know I need to figure out what they're doing versus what they're not doing to figure out why it's not connecting. I know, you know, when I've talked with Chief Harvey about opioids in Central Lyon, he's been pretty like, we won't identify an overdose on scene. They utilize Narcan as a rule out drug, and they've utilized Narcan as a rule out drug for decades.
Right.
And so his staff and he will not identify an opioid use at the scene. They'll push Narcan, it does or it doesn't do something. They do their additional work and then they get them to the hospital. So they leave it up to the hospital to identify what's going on there. And that might be the difference in a check mark. I don't know.
Thank you. Next question I have is on the whole assessment package that you listed on the low level priorities. You mentioned co-locate naloxone with all stop the bleed kits and AED locations. I've been involved in legislation, multiple sessions now, getting Narcan available in the schools and other things, along with the EpiPens, et cetera. And I'm just wondering if you could refer me to where that's been discussed, because that's the first that I've seen that suggestion, and wondering where that came from. Because again, the stop the bleed kits and the AEDs, you're not actually giving somebody something. You may be shocking them, but it's different than injections, et cetera. So I'm wondering if you have any information on where I can do further research on that particular suggestion.
There is an app. I'll have to go back and look at what the specific title of that app is. It's something that Douglas County has implemented, and that came through the Resilient 8 collaborative effort. And it's not meant for the injectable Narcan, but for the naloxone nasal spray.
Okay.
Which is safe for anyone to be able to utilize. So the concept is that, and what Douglas County had done was within this app, they have access, you can identify where the nearest AED or stop the bleed kit is. And then if naloxone was a part of that, you could add that as an item in there. So if you were a community member out in the community with somebody overdosing or something, a crisis happening, you would know where the closest location was to access that if you didn't have it readily available yourself.
I think it's a great idea. All right. Any other questions? Then this is an action item.
Yeah.
So I would look to a motion to accept this, I guess it's an assessment
Yeah.
as presented by Ms. Holmes today.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion that the Lyon County Board of Commissioners approve the Lyon County Human Services Opioid Needs Assessment as presented by Shayla Holmes, the Director of Lyon County Human Services.
Second.
Second.
So it's a community second and and with well, any discussion? So we'll take a motion to all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And with that, we thank you, Shayla.
Madam Chair, we should probably go to public comment.
Okay,
Thank you, Andrew. I was just getting ready to chime in.
great. Before we take the vote, then I guess we should probably have public comment. Public? Anybody on our Zoom meeting? Any hands?
I don't see anybody on Zoom.
Please, thanks, Julia.
Yeah, Julia Peak for the record. So API actually stands for Application Programming Interface. And I'll just say we do this a lot in public health. We don't have the actual data set. There's an interface that we build that flows the information to us. So not atypical, but Sheila, we can certainly look into what specifically is broken in the API for this interface.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we've took one step back. Maybe we can move forward now. So we'll take that vote again just to make sure it's on the record. We've had our public comment on the motion and the presentation. Now we've moved to approve by Commissioner Jacobson and seconded by the rest of the panel. And we took a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Great, thank you. And thank you for the presentation. All right, moving on to the next agendized item for the Board of Health is presentation and discussion. Presentation seeking input on regional behavioral health policy boards, upcoming legislative sessions, bill draft request. And we have Taylor Allison here from NACO, and Sherilyn Wood from the North is the coordinator for the Northern Behavioral Health Coordinator. And I'm going to identify that I sit on that board as the legislative representative to that board. So with that, we'll turn it over to you folks. Thank you.
Thank you, board, for your time and constituent members for allowing the Northern Regional Behavioral Health Policy Board Chair Taylor Allison and myself, Sherilyn Wood, to present on BDR 385, which just became an assembly bill yesterday. We're AB 9. So that's kind of exciting, which revises the provisions governing regional behavior and health policy boards. So, okay, so this is our board members. You can see that they come from the region that we represent, the Northern region, which consists of Carson, Churchill, Douglas, Story, and Lyon counties. That's the Northern region. And you can see that the board members really represent those regions, professionals that represent those regions. The Northern Regional Behavioral Health Policy Board was formed in Assembly Bill 366 of the 2017 legislature to advise the Commission on Behavioral Health, Department of Health and Human Services, and the Division of Public and Behavioral Health on behavioral health issues experienced in each region's communities. In 2019, the Nevada legislature revised the duties and composition of each board and expanded those regions from 4 to 5. So now we have 5 regions, and each region is allocated one bill draft request, or BDR, to the Nevada legislature each session. This presentation provides an overview of the BDR, the Northern Regional Behavioral Health Policy Board, selected for the 2023 legislation session. So this is a map of the regions, and you can see that we've got the Washoe, we've got the Rural Behavioral Health Region, the Southern Behavioral Health Region, Clark, and then the Northern Behavioral Health Region, which is who I support. And those have been broken down. So the 2020 board priorities really came out of several strategic planning workshops that the board conducted. And then they adopted the following priorities in March of 2022. And those really are the regional board infrastructure, making sure that we're consistent and we can stay consistent throughout the years. Affordable and supportive housing and other social determinants of health was a big push. And you're going to hear a lot about that this legislative session about supportive housing and affordable housing. The behavioral health workforce and capability to treat youth and adults. And we know that's been a big issue with that lack of workforce recently. And I think it's going to be an issue that we have moving forward too. So we've got to look at how do we create some new unusual ways to bring the behavioral health workforce. Development of a sustainable regional crisis response system that integrates existing local crisis stabilization, jail diversion and reentry resources, such as the MOST, the FAST, the CIT, which stands for Crisis Intervention Training. We have been doing a lot of those with our law enforcement as well as our EMS, our dispatchers, our hospitals, and then working closely with Carson Tahoe Mallory Crisis Center. And they increase the access of treatment to all levels of care. And then develop services to support continuity of care, continuation of medication, community health worker model, all those things moving forward, looking at peers, bringing different people to the table. And the Northern Board recognizes that not all of the board's priorities required legislative solutions. The regional coordinator, chair, and members of the board work really closely with DHS to provide recommendations and identify solutions to achieve greater outcomes within our region. The two areas that continue to rise to the top for proposed policy solutions were regional infrastructure and workforce, because without those two systems, our region does not have the foundation to improve the other priority areas that are listed on here. While the Northern Board heard several proposed bill draft requests from professional groups, providers, and key stakeholders related to behavioral health workforce and community health worker models, affordable and supportive housing solutions, our board really ultimately voted to take the lead on exploring infrastructure solutions. Most of the BDRs that were presented to the board were selected by other regional policy boards or other legislative bodies. So that's a good thing. So our 2022 regional infrastructure strategies identified in the Northern Board's 2022 strategic plan were to explore regional behavioral health authority concepts to potentially increase system efficiency and focus on serving individuals in their communities, sustain the regional behavioral health coordinator's job that are critical to Nevada's behavioral health system and to the regional policy boards, as well as sustain necessary support positions. So.
Perfect. For the record, Taylor Allison, I am currently serving as your public health coordinator at the Nevada Association of Counties. But in that role, I have been appointed as the Northern Board Chair. I have been since 2019. So I've walked this journey in how do we move forward. Each board gets one bill draft request in each legislative session. And as Sherlyn mentioned, without infrastructure and workforce, you really can't expand or move anything forward to create solutions. That is the foundation. So we really leaned into infrastructure. What is going to work in our region? I'm a proud Lyon County resident. I know there's challenges in rules, but we often come together to figure out what's the most efficient way forward with the limited resources we do have. So the board spent a lot of time doing research in local models, community-based behavioral health systems, what works in Nevada, or what research has been done to move community-based systems forward, such as local behavioral health authority. That is one proposed model, similar to a public health district, a public health authority, but for behavioral health services. And so we looked a lot at that. There's a couple papers out there from the Gwynn Center, DHHS, Department of Health and Human Services paper studies, The legislature also had designated studies just to this topic. And then on the right, you see a map. Our board looked at what's happening in all 50 states similar to ours. Nevada is one of the only states that has a centralized behavioral health system that's run primarily by the state, but also has these boards to provide that advisory role. Most states have moved towards having community-based systems, whether they're county level models, regional behavioral health systems, and then very few states that offer Medicaid managed care are moving towards having regional systems designated around their managed care system. With that research, we also considered, with the pandemic, it really exacerbated behavioral health challenges. There's gaps and inefficiencies that rose to the top that we may not have been aware of prior to the pandemic and then have escalated since. So looking at a bill draft proposed solution, we started mapping out the services that make up behavioral health. It's a very complex system in our state. We kind of have two systems that run parallel with informal relationships through grant subawards down to the community providers and to county governments such as Shayla's Department of Human Services. And what we noted is there is still a significant gap in formalizing the regional behavioral health coordinators and the work that's done in local behavioral health task forces. These are ad hoc groups in each county in our region that really are the movers and shakers of let's apply for grants to support those most fast CIT programs. Our board 2 years ago took the initiative to develop a regional behavioral health emergency operations plan is one example, and that really came from gaps and needs identified in those local task forces. So how can we help support that? Those two boxes in gray from our board with infrastructure, in addition to looking at community-based offering services to folks where they live. So like Shirley mentioned, we have AB 9. These in summary are the primary components of that bill draft. As we're working through what does that look like and how can our board support community level infrastructure. And so the very first step is expanding our advisory role or advisory capacity to the Department of Health and Human Services Division of Public and Behavioral Health and the Commission on Behavioral Health to advise on any services provided under the provision of managed care. There was a bill in the 2021 legislature to have managed care services in the rural communities by 2026. And so this is a proactive approach that how can we ensure that those provisions of services are adequately meeting the needs of folks in our region. It would allow the policy boards to appoint staff necessary to fulfill duties, and we'll get into that a little bit more in the value of this particular position, the regional behavioral health coordinator. Allow the boards to apply for and accept gifts, grants, donations, and bequests similar to the Children's Mental Health Consortia. Allows flexibility, including paying for staff and necessary to achieve those objectives. If needed, award grants to governmental agencies, nonprofit entities for the provision of behavioral health services, and then require the mental health consortias to share their strategic plans with the board to eliminate any possible duplication of efforts. So our current board duties, as we mentioned a couple times, are to advise those groups on services offered to both adults and youth, identify any problems, propose plans for services, gaps, needs, priorities for allocating funding. Our board often provides letters to Administrator Whitley's office and other leadership at Department of Health and Human Services after we've taken comments from the community on gaps and needs and formalize the solution forward. What's important to note here with our duties is that we don't have the infrastructure to even fulfill the duties on this page, such as an electronic data repository and analyzing behavioral health data. A lot of that we spoke to with the opioid needs assessment here today. So adding that capability of having staff or infrastructure forward would give us a solution to those data challenges that you heard earlier today. We also compile an annual report that goes to the commission and eventually to the governor's office on the needs of this region. So we would add to these duties, evaluate and monitor behavioral health services provided to recipients of Medicaid managed care. As far as staffing goes, this would allow the board to appoint staff. We did compile a letter what the staffing need would be for the 5 regional boards moving forward, which would be 1 FTE per region of a regional behavioral health coordinator, 1 administrative support position to keep us in compliance with open meeting law, and then 1 shared data analyst to support the data repository, electronic data dashboard, and then the compilation of the reports needed. I just want to share, most of these positions are already funded by the state. Charlene obviously is here with us today. We do get administrative support from the state in some capacity. And then there are data analysts that could be leveraged to support the board specifically in better achieving the duties that we've been assigned as a legislative body. So those all can be, it's not a new ask that our board is asking, just to support our Oakland region. I already spoke to potentially the ability to accept gifts, grants, donations, and that could be in many forms. Like I mentioned, the children's rural children's mental health consortium, for example, utilize anything that comes to them. They put on workshops, strategic plans for the region. Ours could be to support staff. That regional behavioral health emergency operations plan is a great example in implementation and supporting local emergency management offices. This would just be leveraging those to get them back out to the community agencies. And then, like I mentioned, having the consortia share the strategic plans. The ultimate goal is there's no duplication. We want efficient systems that support the community's behavioral health system. And in summary, our board spent a lot of time in this. We created a committee to dive into local behavioral health authority models, which we ultimately decided it's a little bit premature to shift our system entirely to community-based, which our state has struggled with since behavioral health was deinstitutionalized in the late 60s, early 70s. But there are things that we can work on now, and we've prioritized that. And then it's really important to our board to take a whole community approach, and that's why we're here at the Board of Health today. Commissioners' eyes on this, boards of health eyes on this, community stakeholders, providers. We want to make sure any solutions or proposed solutions that come out of the Northern Board are a whole community priority. And then Sherilyn has a couple, the other boards where their BDRs are at.
Yeah, just a little update on where the other regional policy boards are with their BDRs. Clark's BDR 303, a supportive housing through real property transfer tax. It kind of reads like this: add an additional 15 cents per 500 of the sales value of a property to the real property transfer tax. The revenue will be placed in supportive, very low income, extremely low income housing fund known as the Critical Needs Fund within the Account for Affordable Housing, aka Nevada Trust Fund, managed by the NHD, which is the Nevada Housing Division, and they'll sub-allocate up to 20% of the funds to the Department of Welfare and Supportive Services. The NHD already receives 10 cents per 500 sales value and already sub-allocates to DWSS. An annual allocation of up to $50,000 will also be made to each regional behavioral health policy board to fund its work relative to housing and behavioral health. So that's kind of a little rundown on what BDR 303 is. The rural region, which would be Valerie Haskins, BDR 361 became an assembly bill yesterday through 37 that authorizes the establishment of the Behavioral Health Workforce Development Center of Nevada.
at one or more institutions within the Nevada system of higher education, NISHI, prescribing the structure and duties of the center, authorizing the Board of Regents of the University of Nevada, Reno to accept, receive, invest, disperse, and account for money received for purposes related to the center and providing other matters properly relating thereto. The Washoe BDR 399, still waiting for that bill number, expands the loan repayment program administered by the Nevada Health Service Corps to include certain providers of behavioral health care. And it's an act relating to behavioral health, making certain providers of behavioral health care eligible to participate in the program of loan repayment administered by the Nevada Health Service Corps, making an appropriation and providing other matters properly relating thereto. The Southern Rural BDR 400 was recently withdrawn. So with that, that's kind of an update of what bills are coming out of the behavioral health regions.
Thank you for that. Do we have any questions from our board? So yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a question regarding the Clark BDR. Are they looking at that with a population cap, or are they envisioning that to apply statewide?
I cannot answer that question. I've sat in on 2 presentations and I'm still kind of trying to figure out what's really going on with that BDR. I can go ahead and give that I can reach out to the board chair and find out.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So first, thank you both for being here and the presentation. Just note for everybody, our members of this board, that all the members on these behavioral health boards, none of us are reimbursed for that. And the only ones that actually are paid for that are our behavioral health coordinators that help with each board. The second thing I want to point out is that very large graph where you had multiple agencies in mental health. And I think one of the things that has frustrated me on this board is we have a lot of people talking about mental health, which tends to drive the rest of us crazy and have issues with our mental health, but nothing actually gets done and involved in mental health. And so one of the things that our board is looking at is actually trying to kind of consolidate some of these boards, or at least try to understand why do we have so many boards and we really are still failing in mental health. And so that was kind of the direction that this board went toward. And so thank you for your presentation. And and with that, I guess I can go, it's not an action item, it's for just discussion only. And do we need to take any public comment?
You can if you want.
Okay, and thank you very much. Anybody, any public comment? Seeing no hands raised nobody in the audience and nobody on our screen. I'm going to go to the next item 8C for presentation only. Presentation on concept of localized health districts and the potential benefits to our counties. Julia Peak, who is the Deputy Administrator of State of Nevada Divisions of Public and Behavioral Health, will do the presentation. And I just want to personally thank Julia for being here. She has helped the state of Nevada through many trials, most notably the COVID pandemic, now endemic, and she's been a consistent advocate for all of Nevada, not just for mental health, but all health. And it also, this action, this presentation, if those that were maybe at this meeting a couple months ago when we talked about your county health officer position and some of the roles of the county health officer, it was brought up at that time that there's kind of a new concept throughout the state about forming localized health districts and what that's going to look like in the future. Because if anything the pandemic did was identified the gaps in our public health system. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Julia for the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'll just say I've been with public health for 17 years, but Dr. Titus has always been there way before me and such a good public health warrior. So I just want to appreciate you and acknowledge you. Perfect. Okay, public health jurisdictions. As Dr. Titus mentioned, my name is Julia Peak, born and raised actually in rural Nevada in Douglas County. Have a house in Lyon County as well, but currently live in Reno. So I am committed to serving the entire state, I'll just say. But I want to talk specifically today about public health and some really great advancements that we're making specifically related to local control, which I think is something that we've been working on for so long. Some of my first conversations were actually with Shayla and Jeff Page and others looking at what this looks like for Lyon County. And it's just really difficult to move forward, but it's moving forward. So we can talk about that. The first slide I have is just talking about overarching visions for public health. Am I supposed to be changing? Sorry. Thought it was API. I'm just kidding. So the first one really is what we're going to focus on for this presentation, but I do want you to see the other things that we're really working for. One of the biggest challenges for COVID and really addressing all public health issues is sustainable funding. And so as was presented with the challenges with the behavioral health coordinators and the boards, we have many boards that advise us on various things, including public health and behavioral health. But if we don't have funding to operationalize it, it's just having the same discussion a lot, but not really being able to take action on that. And that really centers around having some sustainable funding. The other thing for public health is we are largely grant funded. And so as we get grants, we can open new programs. As we lose grants, we lose the entire program. And that's just really difficult for our residents and for us trying to oversee that. I'm going to skip the next because I feel like for you all, it is looking at regionalization. The first thing I just wanted to talk about is public health services generally. I think, especially with COVID, number 2 on there is really what folks think public health focuses on most of the time. And it is looking at hazards and issues that the community is facing and trying to figure out how we can intervene to make people's lives more healthy and live longer. But that's only a portion of what we do. Shayla gave a great example of what we do as far as looking at needs assessment gaps and then trying to find interventions for those. And that's number 1. But those 2 things are not a public health system. And I think that's what we really are challenged with in Nevada. We consistently are the lowest funded public health system in the nation. But you could say that of many of our services in HHS or otherwise, education and others. So we have to really rub pennies together to develop programs, and often they're federal pennies. Taylor talked about this a little bit. The governance within Nevada is unique. So with the mental health services on the map prior, you saw that Nevada was largely centralized, meaning the state oversees all those services, different for public health. So we are considered only one of 2 states that is largely decentralized, meaning that much of the population is served by a local health department. It's a little mishmash for Nevada in that you see we're also not entirely decentralized. What this basically means is that where there's a health district or a health authority, they oversee those services directly. Everywhere else falls to the state. And so for disease investigation, just as an example, we have 2 staff that are designated to serve primarily all the rural counties as it relates to disease investigation. Diseases such as STDs specifically are such a huge workload, highest they've seen actually nationally in many, many years. And so that workload is substantial, but we provide that direct service to you. And I'll say when COVID started, we did have conversations with commissioners and others. Many counties didn't have a health officer designated. Many counties hadn't had a county board of health, and they didn't know what public health services were offered. So silver lining there is that we did make really good relationships, I would say, to help folks understand what we are doing in the rural communities. So public health governance primarily lies within NRS 439. Many of those statutes are very old. Some have been updated, but for the most part, those areas related to health districts, county boards of health, city boards of health have been there a long time. We at the state also have a board of health that supports the county boards of health and districts. And then we have a chief medical officer. It's most important to know that the chief medical officer has a great deal of authority in the counties in which we oversee related to infectious disease response and other things. And we do our best to work with the county health officers as well as we make decisions in those communities. During the just after the Great Recession many years ago, there was NRS developed where there would be an assessment charge. We had a general fund for tuberculosis, for STD treatment and other things. That funding was removed, environmental health, I believe as well. That general fund was removed due to budget cuts. And within that NRS, then there was an assessment portion put in. So the contract probably comes in front of you all to review. But you see that we charge an assessment for the services we provide related to infectious disease response, the community health nurse that we provide, environmental health services and others. Local government governance, I would say Lyon County, you guys know this better than any other county because your Board of Health has been really the most healthy in the rural counties and meeting most regularly, again, under Dr. Titus's leadership. So you oversee a number of things, including the sanitary conditions. You have limited authority in some areas. For example, you may do other activities if you so choose, but not required to. As we look at what changes are in front of you to consider, you already have a good idea of what regionalization looks like, because as was just presented, the regional behavioral health boards have been a new aspect of local governance that I think has been really healthy, where you can look locally at the issues. And Dr. Titus's quote that was provided earlier, I think is really important, that each county is very different and each region is different. And so we need to understand that information as we're making decisions. Okay, so the first thing that you have the ability to do is remove assessments. This is a process that's detailed out in NRS. So for example, if you're paying $100,000 for environmental health services and nursing services, and you say, you know what, I think we could invest that money locally better and provide that service, that's absolutely something you can consider. It's a process. You send the request to the governor. If he or she one day approves it, then you can present that to the legislative IFC. We just did that for the Central Nevada Health District, Churchill County and others, and that was approved with no real issue. We are supportive of it at the division. If you would like to provide those services, we have no issue. So we're going to support you as that goes to the table. So 6 months after that approval process, you no longer pay us, but you are required to offer those services locally. The next piece of that is regionalization. And I'd say one of the most difficult things that we've seen over the last decade is counties maybe choose to remove the assessment and then offer something locally, but it's really hard to operationalize the level of service needed at that scale. So if every single little county decided to pull that funding and get one person devoted to public health, that person would need to be a nurse, an environmental health specialist, an epidemiologist, et cetera. And that's just not reasonable for one individual. So we're really trying to support regionalization, meaning several counties come together. You gather your resources, and together maybe you have 20 people that you're able to hire to support those various services, and you all contribute funding to that. What also needs to occur with that is you dissolve your county boards of health and your county health officer. So that would be an act of the board that you vote on. Both of those things dissolve. And then you develop this district board of health, and you have a district health officer appointed. The Central Nevada Health District, I'll talk about in a minute, but they're going through this process now. So they're going through hearings where they're going to start dissolving these things and also give notice to their county health officer, and they're going to recruit for them district leadership in that regard. You also have to do all the regulations, and then you have slightly greater duties, but they're more broad for public health. So actually offering a more holistic service to your region. So there's currently 2 district boards of health, Washoe County Health District, and then the Southern Nevada Health District. Carson City, who does many services in your community, they actually aren't a health district. They're a city health department, basically, that provides powers through the chief medical officer to provide those services in your communities. And they also, like Douglas County, asked to have their assessment removed, and they do all those services locally. So in order for, if you said we want Carson City Health and Human Services to become Quad County, and you often hear the Quad County region referred to this group of 4 counties who work together, they would need to dissolve the City Board of Health, and then you all would need to dissolve your county boards of health. So certainly much discussion would go into that prior. You could also, because much of the services they're offering is through delegation, you could say, we're going to work with different counties. If Carson chooses not to move forward with that, we work with a different county, or perhaps Douglas and Lyon are ready and they choose to move forward together. So there's a number of ways you could look at this, but certainly many discussions offline. So this is actually success. I have to say, this has been over a decade in the making. So we are in the process of forming the first rural regional health district. You can see the partners that have come to the table for that. Churchill County, Fallon, who actually hadn't really participated with DPBH directly, which is our division, has come to the table because they see the great value in this. So they're going to be contributing resources. Pershing County, Mineral County, and Eureka County. So as you can see, a large geographic region. that they're well aware is going to be a challenge to offer the services, but based on what they've offered so far, I couldn't be more impressed with how this region is going to form. So this I pulled actually from a slide given by Shannon Ernst in Churchill County, because she's really living this now with leadership there. And some of the biggest challenges they have is within NRS, there's different stipulations on how you can form a health district based on population. So Southern Nevada's health district looks vastly different than one that would be in a rural county or in Washoe County. And that has to do with budget and certain authorities and other things, but there is a differentiation there. So you need to know what part of NRS really that you're moving toward. The other thing is that by law right now, you have to be adjacent if you're partnering with another county. As I showed you on that previous slide, Eureka is not adjacent. So technically Eureka can't be part of this health district by law as it stands now, but the interim healthcare committee will likely be bringing forward a bill to remove that. And I think that's a fabulous idea, mainly because as you could see, most of our staff are in Carson and Washoe. And so we don't touch nearly any of the counties in which we serve. So I think that removal of that word will actually have great impact. So as Shannon and Jim Barbie and JJ Gokachia and others started looking at this, they really tried to find counties that weren't already working with other counties, such as the Quad County region that had similar visions for public health, strategies for addressing COVID, and decided to start meeting with those county commissioners and figuring out if there was opportunity there. And they all came forward to do that. And I just wanted to share their creation and goals. And I'll share also a little anecdote that Shannon shared. Like normally when you go and you have to do your vision and goals, it's days long process where you all are disagreeing about words. This happened in almost no time at all, just showing how much these counties are aligned in the way that they're going to offer public health services. And so not going to read that to you. I just want to share that that is something that Lyon County can and should consider, which counties are similar to yours that you think you might want to partner with. Should you choose to go down this path, again, no pressure. From what I saw in COVID, specifically in Churchill County, Quad County, the services that were stood up locally were phenomenal. You all live in your community, you know what your community needs, the resources that your community has to operationalize. And so we are very supportive of making this local regionalization, but of course, we're not going to push you should that not be what the board wants to provide. So there's my contact information if anybody wants to talk offline about this or strategize, but happy to take questions.
Thank you, Julia. Questions?
Just a lot of information.
There is indeed. Thank you. And thank you again for great information. Want to point out again, some of the things that she noted. I do sit on the interim health committee for the legislature, and that is one of our BDRs we're going to put in to remove that term contiguous. And it's a bill that similar to a bill I put in for water, that you don't have to have your fields contiguous. We can take that out. Lander County chose that they wanted to continue what they were doing and did not want to be part of it, but we didn't want that to obstruct what everybody else was doing. Just an overview right now with the Quad counties, we work closely, and through this pandemic, work closely with Carson City that could stand up many of the things that we needed to do. But it's not an official health district, and there's a distinct difference on that where the funding comes and how that's organized. And so thank you for the presentation. I think it's something that I feel on a personal level would be best, something that I really appreciate the county commissioners to consider and look at what the benefits would be, and perhaps sit down with the county commissioners at some point of the other counties and just see where they are in their process with this. So thanks, Julia, for that. Any public comment or thoughts or questions? Since this was, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, please step up to the podium.
My question is, if you remove that, where they have to be kind of localized, that variance, because of our travel, our transportation and our vast rural, does that kind of hinder those counties that are separated when it comes to services and things like that? That was my question.
No, it's a great question. And so as I mentioned earlier, the state's providing that service now. So our nurses will spend half a day traveling to see one patient. So it's going to be something that the Central Nevada Health District is well aware of. And so they're trying to figure that out. Also, if you're able to use more funds locally and more people come to the table, maybe it's not one nurse that has to travel the 4 counties. Maybe it's 2 nurses and you get a nurse that's there more often. And so
And some services can still be offered remotely. You know, and what I've seen, I'll just say with the Central Nevada Health District is their ability to mobilize and get people to the location specifically for vaccination and other things has been phenomenal. Also, being able to work more closely with the local emergency manager is huge. That relationship is already built with you all at the county level and not as good with the state to the emergency manager, but has grown during COVID. So those are all things that I think are really important, but Central Nevada Health District and whichever counties choose to do this in the future will need to consider the geography challenges in offering that.
Great. Well, thank you. With that is our last presentation for this Board of Health. At this time, we can have public participation. No action will be taken on any item until it's properly agendized.
Shayla Holmes, Director, Lyon County Human Services. For the record, I just wanted to address Commissioner Jacobson's question earlier about actual removals. Children removed from parents due to parental substance use for Lyon County in 2020 was 16 and 2021 was 30.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any public participation? I see none on the screen and none in the room. And with that, do I need to take a motion to adjourn or just adjourn?
Just adjourn.
All right, with that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Dr. Titus. As noted, we've now adjourned to reconvene as the Lyon County Board of Commissioners. And with that being said, we're going to take a 5-minute break. Okay, I saw commissioners, they all ran away.
We might need another minute.
If everybody can please take their seats.
Okay, I think everybody's back. Right now, we're going to, since we've been holding them up, go back to our 9:15 a.m. for presentation only, the introduction and update from Smith Valley Fire Chief Matthew Nightingale.
Hi there, Matt Nightingale. I'm the newly hired fire chief for Smith Valley. I've been there for about a month now. I'll just give you a quick rundown about Smith Valley. We're still a completely all volunteer department. We're the only still full volunteer department in the county. So we do have about 24 members on our roster and about 8 that are our full-time responders that pretty much show up to everything. I'd have to say the camaraderie has begun to be a lot better, and we struggle with getting new younger kids in there, but we are offering some classes and stuff. We're beginning to do EMT advanced and basic class in January, so we're trying to get more community involvement with teaching the classes there with easier time constraints to get those classes done. To date, we're at 182 calls. We're working to have a better working relationship with the community. Look forward to working with the community and the county commissioners. I want to thank you for the money for the new ambulance. It's on order and should be delivered in 2024. But it does help because we were in the process of purchasing an ambulance anyway, so we're going to have 2 ambulances that are exactly the same. So that helps with the responders that don't get the call volume to know where things are in both ambulances. We thank you for that and look forward to working with you guys. Any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Nightingale?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Hockaday.
I just wanted to thank the chief for the great care that he gave me on the ambulance in September. I'm glad that they showed up, and I wasn't glad my wife called the ambulance, but I'm glad that they did show up. So thank you. I appreciate everything you guys do in Smith Valley.
I just want to thank you for coming in today and introducing yourself, and we look forward to working with you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, Madam Chair, if I may.
Commissioner Henderson.
Yeah, I wanted to thank you as well. And yeah, you mentioned the ambulances, and since you're new chief, I just want to throw an idea out there that maybe you and the other 3 chiefs or 4 chiefs in the county get together and all decide on one type of ambulance.
Yeah,
And then maybe we could make some economy of scale savings.
I'm not opposed to that.
Okay.
We
All right,
can look
thank you.
at that going forward. We've had the one ordered for about 2 years, and it's now pushed back to, I think I got an email yesterday that our newest one's supposed to be here February or March. And they're having all these chassis issues and microchip issues, and every issue that everybody else is having. So.
All right. Thank you, and thanks for what you do.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Okay, got through those. All right, Andrew, do we have any presentations today that anybody's waiting on?
None today.
Today, okay. Okay, hang on a second. I'm looking for my item number that I wanted to move to next, and it's escaping me. Okay, we're gonna jump forward now to item 20A. For a presentation and report, a presentation from Resource Concepts, Inc. on the preliminary maps that were created as a part of the lands bill exploration process. I'm assuming Jeremy's still there somewhere.
Pam, good morning,
Okay.
Madam Chair.
You're just out of camera sight, so I wasn't sure.
All right, that's how I work best, is hiding just off the camera, so. Welcome, good morning, commissioners. For your record, Jeremy Drew, Principal Resource Specialist with Resource Concepts. Wanted to provide a mapping update today on where we stand with kind of, as you mentioned, the preliminary steps of what we've put together for a lands bill. And before we get into that, I wanted to talk just a little bit about our role in the process, not quite as much for the commissioners and staff, but maybe a little bit for some of the public that I know have had a lot of questions and even approached me with some of their questions. And really our role in this is that we can only develop information for your consideration and what you all want to do. We're ultimately not going to write the lands bill, only Congress can do that. Our role is to provide technical information to help inform policy. So anything that ultimately ends up in Congress will have to come through this commission, through your delegation, and then they'll ultimately have to go to the bill drafters in Congress to develop that. We can certainly help inform that process and shepherd it along from a technical standpoint, but I'm not the guy ultimately with the pen at the end of the day. Typically, again, the lands bill formally starts, the congressional part of it formally would start with a Board of County Commission resolution or letter request to its congressional delegation. We're really not anywhere close to that, at least in my mind. And very seldom do you see a lands bill start without that sort of community outreach. So the process itself tends to be slow and deliberate. In my mind, that's a good thing. I think the fastest way to kill a lands bill is to start too fast. And not have things properly vetted before it gets to those levels. If this is a 10-step process, I would view that we're probably at step 1 in deciding what exactly we want to include going forward. And so that's what I have to provide for you today. So the input that we've received so far and that has gone into the maps has included information from the staff, the manager's office and community development, in terms of a series of parcels that equate to about 19,000 acres Anything from the old Fernley landfill to the areas in and around the Mound House in Dayton, commercial and industrial areas, parcels associated with the Dayton flood project. Central Lyon County, we've talked about fire today, has identified some areas of interest for potential future fire station. Things of that nature. We have reached out to Fernley because they're developing their own lands bill. And we're really trying not to step on each other or cross over there. So some of that is also on the map. As far as non-county requests, we've gotten one through Desert Hills Dairy. We were aware of them from previous work we did with the BLM's resource management plan. They're a little bit landlocked where they're at, and so we're aware of that. Obviously, and I think what's generated the most interest is what you've heard from Hudbay Minerals. And I'll talk just a little bit about that initially, so folks know where we're at. So the initial request that we got from Hudbay, or this, yeah, you can put it up. The initial request that we got from Hudbay was a shapefile that included about 40,000 acres. And what I want to make sure everyone understands is they told us very early on is that was preliminary and the largest area that they would want to see. We had one follow-up meeting with them, meaning myself, prior county manager Jeff Page, and Mr. Haskins when he was in his role with community development. We pointed out to them that area would be problematic, both from a size standpoint, as well as a geography standpoint, and the potential conflicts with not only biological and environmental resources, but also multiple use, access, and things of that nature. Our understanding coming out of that meeting is that Hudbay was going to refine their project area and ultimately what they would need to request from a lands bill. They have since made presentations in Smith Valley. They've since made presentations to this board. I think the acreages that have been reported in those two meetings are quite a bit smaller. The 23,000 sticks out in my mind in terms of what they may have told the audience in Smith Valley. Somewhere between 18 and 20,000, I think, is what they may have mentioned to you all the last time we met. So realize that what's on the map has been refined, but we have not gotten a formal request back from them that defines if they were to move forward with the lands bill that included them, what that would look like. Okay. We did reach out to the Yerington Paiute tribe. They indicated that if we did move forward with a full-scale county's lands bill, that they would be interested in land essentially adjoining the Hudbay request running north into Adrian Valley. While I have not received a map from them, I would say that the magnitude of their request would be on the scale of tens of thousands of acres. So again, it would be large, it would be complex. There would be multiple use values in those areas that would certainly stand to be affected. We have not had an opportunity to sit down individually with the Walker River Paiute tribe, but I do know in my work with Churchill County around the naval expansion and some of what's going on over there, that they do have interest in at least a parcel around the Silver Springs area, which is a little bit of an issue because I know that's an area that you all have an interest in for like a regional sports complex and something we've looked at several years ago. And so the bottom line is, while we have all these requests, we have not gone through the process of sifting what should be in and what should be out of the lands bill. So that's where we're at today and what we've put together. And really what we've put together, and we'll step through it on the screen. And then I will also offer, when this is done, to make myself available in the foyer. So anyone that's here that wants to look specifically at the maps can look at a large scale version and not be confined to the eye test that's in the support material. And I'll spend as much time as you'd like just to go through what we've developed so we can have an open conversation on where we're at least today. So the first map that Andrew has up on the screen and that's in your packet simply shows the requests that have been made to this point. The Fernley Lands Bill request is up top. My GIS gal calls it a spiced orange color. I kind of was trying to go for Vaquero orange on that. The areas that had been indicated in and around the Dayton, Mound House, and Silver Springs area by the county are identified in a green hatch. And you can see where those areas are. Obviously, Hudbay is kind of central in red. And Desert Hills Dairy sits immediately above that in kind of a purple color. We indicated or put a space on the map for tribal requests. Obviously, those are blank at this time, but just to make sure there's a placeholder there for that going forward. We also show current land ownership on this map, so everything kind of in that goldenrod color is BLM. Anything in white would be private. Anything in green would be Forest Service, and then down in South County, obviously we have the Wavoka Wilderness, and then we also have Burbank Canyon Wilderness Study Area. Even though it comes just a little bit into the Smith Valley or Lyon County side, we felt that was important to show. So this just kind of gives you an overall feel of the kind of the status quo in the county now and where some of those initial requests are. Andrew, if you'd please scroll down, I'll see what's next. So this next map is slightly smaller. And what we did here is we took those same requests, tried to simplify the map, take some of the noise out. And what you see in yellow is actually areas that are identified by the BLM and their current land bill, or excuse me, I want to say lands bill, and their current resource management plan that are identified for disposal. So these are areas that the BLM has vetted, that is identified as basically saying, you know, if there's a better use, we have no issue disposing of these areas. What you'll notice in that is a lot of the area that Fernley is interested in, a lot of the area that you're interested in from a municipal standpoint overlaps that. That's a really good selling point when you do get to the policy side, when you get to the congressional side, because what you can say in that case is, look, the federal agency in charge of managing those lands has already done an initial cursory review and identified that there's not some significant use or biological or cultural value that might hinder conveyance of that land through an administrative process. Okay. So that's what that map portrays. The next map, we kind of toned out everything around Lyon County. This is what we're calling our biological and environmental considerations map. So you'll see the bi-state sage-grouse habitat is shown on the map. We have the 100-year floodplains, which is always important to consider, in light blue along both the Carson and Walker rivers. We also show there's some mapping available now for the Superfund sites associated with the Carson River around Dayton and Mound House. And those are all things that I think are important considerations when you start looking at parcels, because not only do you have the lands bill piece that ultimately would have to get through Congress, there's an administrative piece on the back end of that I'll talk about. And so if you can minimize where you might have a conflict on the front end, it makes a lot of sense. And that's why we've kind of developed this visual representation. Next map, please, Andrew. The next map is a little bit, again, I kind of joke that it's an eye test, but this is what we call our multiple use map. So we've overlaid grazing allotments, we've overlaid mine claims on this. And so you really start to get a sense of where some of those ultimate multiple use values that would be affected by. Obviously, in the Hud Bay area, you're dealing with a handful of grazing allotments. Even in some of those municipal areas, there's some grazing allotments that would be affected. And ultimately, that would result in some reduction of AUMs if there's a permit, an active permit on those allotments. And even if there's not going forward, they're going to reduce the capacity in those AUMs. So just things to be cognizant of when we start again looking at what do we want to include, what don't we want to include, and what those conflicts might look like going forward. Next slide. Okay. And then what I'll wrap up with is just a couple of quick items, and then I'll open it up for any questions. But moving forward, at least in my mind, and perhaps this is a combination type thing, and this is really where we could use some direction if you elect to keep us on through a contract, is I kind of view 4 possible paths forward. One is the no action alternative. Obviously, that's always an option. The second is to focus on key parcels through an administrative process. So if you want to move forward with the firehouse in Dayton, or even Smith Valley for that matter, or you want to do the flood control project or the sports fields, we could go through a Recreation and Public Purpose Act conveyance. That's not going to be overnight. It still requires environmental documentation and everything else. But if there's some really pressing key parcels that we need to move forward on, those would probably be better suited to go that route initially rather than waiting for a lands bill. The drawback there is that it's not going to get you, it's not going to necessarily solve the issues around the commercial and industrial or housing areas that you have. It's really going to be more combined to anything that's a public purpose or recreational value. The third would be to focus on key parcels through a lands bill process. You know, you all have lost a fair amount of private lands, if you want to view it that way. Lost isn't probably the right word other than talking about the tax rolls, but there's been a lot of private property over the last 10 years that has gone from private to public, most of that in the form of state parks or wildlife refuge. I love those areas. I recreate on them all the time. I love to take my family to them, but that also takes a toll on the county and what you all can do on private lands. And so I think a case could be made. Bless you, Commissioner. Thank you. I think a case could be clearly made and articulated to the congressional delegation and the policymakers that, look, this county's lost on the neighborhood of 15 to 20,000 acres over the last 10 years to public lands, which we value and provide recreational values. But on the same hand, we have communities that are growing. We're one of the fastest growing counties in the country, and we need places to put people and the infrastructure to serve them. And I think that's a very easy argument to make. And then the fourth would be the full lands bill, which we've kind of started with, not saying that's their trajectory, but what we show on the maps, where we go to all the tribal interests, all the private interests, in addition to the county interest, and we start putting these pieces together. I will tell you, and for sake of full disclosure, that will significantly complicate the policy and the politics behind moving forward. And I'll give you an example. Pershing County has had a lands bill developed for probably 6 to 8 years now. They started with a similar process where they put all the maps together. What they had that was different was a lot of wilderness study areas. So they kind of had a conservation component as to where does it make sense to keep wilderness or designate wilderness versus release it for multiple use. Where does it make sense to look at conveyances for private or county use? And where does it make sense to look at areas for industrial use and specifically mining? Core Rochester, which is an established mine, well adopted by the community, provides a lot of jobs, a lot of revenue to the county, is one of those areas where they were looking to expand through a lands bill. That portion of the lands bill has really slowed their process and complicated the politics. So just for sake of full disclosure, the bigger and the more complex we make this, the more legwork we're going to have to do on the front end, and the more the policy and the politics is going to unfold on the back end. The challenge I see for Lyon County is, unlike a Pershing County, you all don't really have a lot of land that's available to say, well, this area makes sense as a wilderness, right? The Wavoka was designated when the city of Yerington did their lands bill. I think we came to a general consensus of what made sense there. But there's not, 3 or 4 wilderness study areas hanging out in limbo in Lyon County right now. And so traditionally in a big lands bill like that, you'll look at what's the balance between public lands going kind of to private development type things versus the balance going to conservation. And what I'm struggling with proactively is that conservation piece. We could do some creative things with funding because ultimately there would have to be an exchange of funds for these lands. They wouldn't just give them away, which is what happened with the city of Yerington. But it gets really funny when you get to appropriators in Washington, D.C. They don't necessarily like people telling them how that money can be spent. I'm not saying it can't be done because they've done it in previous lands bills, but it complicates the politics. And so those are kind of what I would view as the 4 options for you all to consider going forward. I would suggest that the right path for you is probably some combination, but that's for you all to decide. All I'm trying to do is lay out the information that's been brought to us thus far. One thing to keep in mind that I'll close with is even if a lands bill passes, and I'm not going to tell you that it's going to be a quick process. I think I said that at the beginning. Even if the lands bill passes, anything identified for conveyance from public lands to private, whether it's the county or an industry or not an individual, but some sort of industry, is going to have a whole other follow-on process. And we went through this with City of Yerington. And essentially, you still have an environmental assessment. You have the environmental site assessment as if you were buying a parcel of land. You have the survey, you have the appraisal, you have the notice of realty action, you have the cultural. And so there's still a whole administrative process to follow on that not only adds time, but also adds money. So the more lands that you look at conveying, just keep in mind that on that back end, there's going to be another associated cost and block of time. That's really all that I had at this point, other than to say one last point. A transfer of land from BLM to any other entity does nothing to curtail or alter the state environmental laws. So just because a portion of land went from BLM to Lyon County doesn't mean the state engineer's office and role goes away. Doesn't mean state NDEP goes away. So all that permitting that has to happen through the state is completely unfettered. And with that, Chair, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Again, I appreciate your time today. I hope that illuminates where we're at in the process, that we're early in the process, and what our role is in helping inform you all going forward.
Thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate this presentation. We had asked, because there was a lot of questions from the public, that this be brought forward, so the public was aware of what was asked for. As you pointed out, nothing's been approved, decided one way or the other. But I did have one question on the map. I was trying to look at where, like you said, you really got to look at that. It was really small to look at. I was noticing there in the Silver Springs area, I didn't see anything colored just south of Highway 50. There by the high schools. I believe there was a piece that was supposed to be submitted to be included from Lyon County. It's approximately 30 acres right next to the high school. That was approved by this board many years ago to be a regional park. And we had some issues with BLM and lost applications, and we've had every excuse under the sun. And so that was supposed to be also included in this possible lands bill someday. Could you verify that that's been included, or we need to get you that APN to get it included?
Chair, I'll work with Mr. Haskin to get the APN to ensure that it's included. With 30 acres, it certainly could be on the map and it's just a pinpoint, but we'll make sure that that's in the municipal request.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate that. Like I said, it's been an ongoing thing that was approved by former boards of commission to move forward on that piece with BLM. And I thought it had been included on this map, but I didn't see it there.
Yeah, I believe that was requested by staff. And so if it's not on there, it's our fault. And again, it may just be a matter of scale, but we can confirm that.
Well, that's why I'm bringing it up. Yeah, the map is very hard to tell on the small stuff, and it would be a small piece. So, but if you could double check, I'd appreciate it. Do I have any other questions from other commissioners?
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate the information. As usual, you guys do your thorough job. Really just a one comment and then a question. First comment is I think it's really prudent to get all the data and all the input and all the requests at the beginning. And then, as you said, this is the start of a long process. So the request will be narrowed down if and when this board decides to move forward with lands bill. But then a question, I know that the RCI and you have been involved in several lands bills around the state. Have you ever seen a lands bill that got submitted, went through this whole process, the maps were decided upon, got submitted, and they were sent to Congress and they came out the same way? Have you ever seen that?
To the commissioner, no.
Thank you.
Frankly. Again, that's one of the challenges or risks with the lands bill is you work hard locally to ensure what's going to come out the other side. The one that probably most closely came out of Congress the way it went in was probably what the city of Yerington did. That being said, that was 4, 5, 6 years of vetting before anything even got put into Congress. So of the lands bills we've worked on, that one is probably the closest, but it took an awful lot of legwork and due diligence on a lot of folks' part to get it to that point.
Yeah, because once these things get to Congress and the federal government, the administration, they have a lot of input into what actually comes out.
Right. And again, the more complexity, the more there's the chance for something to come unraveled there.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. Thank you very much.
Commissioner
Chair.
Jacobson,
Oh,
Commissioner Jacobs, I thought I saw your
yeah.
hand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to thank Mr. Drew for his presentation today. It was very informational. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yep, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Hockaday.
Yeah, again, thank you for your presentation. Couple of questions here. You know, we're hearing that Congress is not really interested in working lands bills for probably the next couple of years. And then, of course, at the end of a couple of years, we don't know what their mood might be then either. Could be 2, 3, 4 years. I don't know, would only hope that we can go in, because my preference would be, since we're seeing this kind of change in attitude from Congress, that we go in specifically and kind of like option 3, we get those things that we really need, like floodplains up near Dayton, take care of the emergency situations we have in the county for those lands that we need to make sure we keep everybody safe, and kind of separate off from a lot of the other areas where we've got a lot of dissension in the areas, especially Smith Valley. So, you know, I'd hope that we can have something on the agenda later on. I know that we will have plenty of public outreach and definitely want public input for making our decisions. And I want people to know that that will be a very important issue for the commission and listening to the community. I know that many times I've heard that the commissioners are just out here, we just want to sell land and make lots of money and give everything to everybody that wants to get it. That's not the case. I've said this before. The commissioners are not sitting up here trying to lie to the public. And I have been accused of being a liar, and I don't appreciate that. We are doing what we can for the benefit of the community, and we look forward to listening to the community and moving on with your organization. As in 16G, I think later we get onto that and discuss it a little bit more as far as the contract. But definitely wanted to make sure that people knew that we are listening and we will do the best we can. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And to the Commissioner's point about how these lands bills come out or where Congress is, I want to say there's 6 or 8 lands bills pending just for Nevada counties. I'm involved in one with Churchill County that's kind of unique because it got wrapped in around the proposed naval expansion. But I believe Churchill, Lander, Carson, Douglas, Pershing all have active land bills pending in Congress. Washoe and Clark are working on lands bills at the county level. They've had kind of fits and starts. And so these things tend to kind of take on a life of their own. And ultimately what tends to happen, and this is what happened with City of Yerington, is you put something together that you think you have consensus with at the local level. It gets into Congress and it kind of sits there and churns until all of a sudden something comes along that looks an awful lot like an omnibus. And 3 or 4 or 5, or maybe all those lands bills belong to it and go. And if you'll remember, City of Yerington was not a standalone bill when it came out. I believe it was part of the National Defense Authorization. So having a plate, I guess my point is, if you have some parcels that you get good consensus on and being in the pipeline as a placeholder, and to Commissioner Henderson's point, trying to make sure nothing changes based on that local input, it's good to be in that process. At the same time, if you have some critical parcels that you need in the next 4 to 6 years, I'd be looking at moving the administrative piece as well, even though you may end up doing some overlap on the work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. And that's one of the things that I was looking at and made comments to this board before moving forward, is some of those key pieces that are critical to Lyon County. Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping to bring, some agenda items forward in the future, well, it won't be me personally, but this board, to address some of those lands. So thank you very much for your presentation and breaking out, that this doesn't have to be one overall bill. There can be different components and different avenues. So I appreciate your time.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to make a comment on that, I agree that we need to continue this process and be ready. I think there's a lot of instances in the past where Lyon County has missed out on opportunities for federal funding because we weren't prepared. So I think we need to continue this process. I appreciate the input from RCI. You guys are the best in the state of doing this. I've been fortunate to work with you guys for a number of years. And as far as the sense of Congress and what the sense of Congress is and what they're going to do and what they're not going to do, I don't even think they know, and it changes day to day, week to week, election to election. So just a sense of Congress not being looking favorable at lands bills right now is not a reason for us to stop. So thank you again, Jeremy.
Thank you, commissioners.
All right, at this time, I know there was a lot of people that wanted to make public comment. Please remember, there is no motions. This was a presentation and a report that was requested. So at this time, all those that were here for public comment on this, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to go to chambers first. Please line up on the wall so Andrew can kind of get an idea how many are there for public comment. The same rule applies, 3 minutes per person. Please state your name for the record and sign in.
Good morning, Leslie Sine Smith. Can I just confirm that this is just about the maps, because this wasn't really agendized for the discussion of the future of the lands bill, correct?
No, it's just presentation.
Presentation only.
Yes.
About the maps. It's not that, okay. So I appreciate that you explained that supposedly HUD Bay's request is reduced. It would be nice if the county had had that information in advance of this map going out, that we learned about it, because you've been hearing from us. It's a big deal to us. It's still a lot of land, and we would like to see the new and revised map as soon as possible. Something that has struck many of us as interesting is, and Mr. Haskins confirmed this morning, there's no backup materials. There's no supporting documents on any of these lands requests. So basically, HUD Bay, Dairy County just gave, I guess, GPS information to Mr. Drew to make a map. This seems a little cart before the horse, that there isn't some staff report or background information on each parcel, such as, a map that has, item 1 is the land the county wants for the park, and this is why it's important, and this is the benefit. So it seems a little cart before the horse. But I am at a loss as to why our county is spending money for a private mining company that in theory should have funding necessary to make this project a go. Why are citizens footing some of their development bill? And let's not forget, they do not need to be on private land to get permitted by the federal government for mining. We should be very worried about their plans for this request. How can anybody look at that map that was presented and think this lands bill is about anything other than HUD Bay minerals? Moving forward, my hope is the whole process will be more open and transparent, and we'll keep in mind our access to public lands, impact to our wildlife, our scenic views, dark night skies, and the overall health and well-being of the Smith Valley community. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else, Andrew?
Looks like there's 2 more in chambers, and then I see a couple online.
Judith Harker, Wellington. This is a comment that it does relate in general to the mine, but also to Mr. Drew's alternative between like 3 and 4, going through the full lands bill, and another one which is focused more on strictly county and municipal parcels. And it's really about, why are we wanting to transfer land to the mine? One of the big reasons is, he mentioned that state regulations will certainly apply to the mine, whether it's public or private. That's true. However, federal regulations may not apply. for example, and there would be less oversight overall in mine operations and permitting. For example, barring certain conditions, the mine won't have to do a costly environmental impact statement. For the mine, fewer regulations means cheaper compliance. Now, a mining company as a first-rate, financially sound operation does not need to be in the landfill. They'll come because the copper is here. And they'll bring jobs anyway and bring the economic development that we're seeking. Whether or not they're in a landfill, they're going to come. They don't need the incentive that the landfill would provide. They can proceed with the normal procedure would be to go through the state and federal permitting process, and that's what all other mines generally do. So sound company can build a mine in compliance with all regulations. You know what? Let's let them do so without the landfill. Let them just go ahead. A mine company that is financially shaky, a kind of second-rate operation, they need the financial incentive that the landfill would provide because maybe they can't afford to do the cost of the federal permitting. Full compliance with state regulations is also costly, and you know, a shaky mine might be less likely to comply. You know what? We don't want that kind of mine. We can't risk giving away the protections we now have under federal law. We'd be inviting long-term environmental problems that would far outweigh any of the job benefits that we get. I argue that we don't want to fall for the argument that the mines need to be in a landfill for economic development. That argument just simply doesn't hold up. Let a good mine come and build a mine without the landfill. So I would like Commissioner Hockaday, let's go for option 3.
Thank you, Judith. Next.
I'm gonna write Judy's name in here. And so I'm Matt Swain from Smith Valley. And I'm trying to get my thoughts together here. The ore body, the size of the ore body we're talking about virtually guarantees that we're going to be seeing a mine here, regardless of how it happens. But I wanted to call attention to some relative square footage or square miles area. They've asked for over 64 square miles of land according to the map, and I understand that the map is tentative. But this is 44% of the size of Carson City County. This is 75% of the size of San Francisco. This is compare the 64 square miles to 15 square miles of irrigated land in Mason Valley, 8.5 square miles of irrigated land in Smith Valley. I'm concerned any parcel that big, we will possibly lose access of Mason Pass and or Gallagher Pass as thoroughfares between Mason Valley and Smith Valley in the event of a flood, which we've seen many floods in the past in Wilson Canyon. And you know, those lands are currently in use for recreation, grazing, and but I think that there are many legitimate uses for the lands bill and items that are in question here in the lands bill that obviously make the lands bill the right thing to do for many of the other aspects, not including the mine. So anyway, and one of the things that we're concerned about is Hudbay is only the placeholder at this point in time. If we think that the mine will actually be developed and put into operation by Hudbay, there's a very good possibility that the land will be sold, and we have no control over who sells the land subsequently and subsequently after that. And right now, this land is our land. We as citizens of the United States own this land, and the BLM manages it for us. And I'm not happy with the idea of selling it and losing some of the authority that we have based upon it currently being BLM land. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others in chambers?
I think one more.
Patricia Swain, Smith Valley. One point that my husband Matt made was about that there's no guarantee that Hudbay will continue to keep and maintain the mine. They could sell it, they could work it partway, develop it, and then sell it. They could sell it to a Chinese company. It's certainly not high on my list. And another thing, the argument is that we need copper. We need more copper. We need, copper for energy independence or whatever. However, there's no guarantee that the United States will benefit from that copper other than indirectly by increasing the general global supply. They could sell it to the highest bidder, and you can bet that they will. So some of these arguments in favor of granting this land to Hudbay, I think, are rather hollow. Thanks.
Thank you. Any others in chambers?
That's right.
Okay, if there's anybody else that's going to give public comment, please line up here against the wall. It looks like there are two more.
Thank you. Good morning, Joanne Lawson, Smith Valley. I just wanted to make a couple quick observations and points. So even at 23,000 acres, that's over 75% of the size of San Francisco, which is about 30,000 acres. I think that kind of gives perspective of the size of the request by Hudbay. And again, as previously said, Hudbay or any other mining company could start the process with BLM today to start mining. They don't need to be given the land and take away our public land. I support a lands bill for community projects. There's no question on that. But I don't support a lands bill for a company and a foreign company. And most likely, as in their presentation before, they're going to send that ore to China to be processed. And I don't like that. One thing that we would like to see is a key for the map, meaning numbered parcels and the size and the use. And then also a question that's never been answered is, what does the county get if we get this land for Hudbay and you sell it to Hudbay? Is there a percentage of the sale? That's never been answered. So that's a question that we would like to have answered as well. Thank you.
So Michael Tanner, Wellington. In addition to a lot of the other points that have been brought up, I'd like to mention that we went to the presentation in Smith Valley, I believe, last summer, and they mentioned a huge drawdown, a possibility of drawdown water in an already suffering aquifer. So that's a very high concern of ours. And there's water's king. We got to consider that. And if this well is if this mine's anything like what they're discussing with the drawdown, we've got a huge problem. And that really needs to be very relevant in your thinking. Thank you.
Any others, Andrew?
Looks like that's it in chambers.
Okay, I'm going to go to Zoom now. Tony. And Tony, I'm going to ask you a question because the way you're on screen, are you speaking as a citizen or are you speaking for your Lyon County Democratic Committee?
Yeah, sorry, I have to apologize for that. I forgot to change the screen name. I am Tony Stevenson, resident of Dayton, and I'm speaking as a citizen.
Thank you, Tony.
I want to give full support to all the criticisms expressed in chamber about the mine. I think that the potential, in addition to what's been said, the potential for an environmental disaster, as we saw with the Anaconda mine, is real. And we have to think about this going forward. It's almost on top of the Anaconda mine, so that's going to have an impact on both the Yerington Paiute tribe and the Walker River Indian Colony. I think both of those groups need to be brought into this discussion before anything happens on that. To the rest of the lands bill, I have to ask, all of this land that's not directly for Lyon County, why do we need to help developers? We don't have the infrastructure we need for our current population. We don't have enough water for our current population. We know that NDOT is 5 to 10 years behind on all projects. The more people we bring in, the more traffic there is. We just got approval in the Central Lyon County Fire District to hire enough staff to fill another station. What happens as our population continues to explode? Our first responders cannot keep up. It's just not feasible. So I'm asking you, the county commissioners, to please reconsider this entire lands bill. Whatever land we get from the BLM, the county is now responsible for. We don't have enough money to take care of our first responders. How are we going to take care of more land? We don't have money magically coming in, and residential taxes are not enough to cover the expenses we currently have. Please reconsider this. I would ask you to stop it for now, save the county a little bit of money, rethink it, and come up with a better plan moving forward. I understand this is just for a presentation. And I hope really it stops here until these big questions are answered. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Mr. Kinninger. And
Thank you.
Tony, could you please take your hand down? Thank you. Mr. Kinninger.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for opening this to public participation. It's greatly appreciated. I'd like to address for a moment Commissioner Hockaday and his concern about everything being open and his concern about having been referred to as a liar. Having been referred to that myself by the former county manager, I can appreciate your sensitivity. The last lands bill that went forward for Urington, at that time, Harry Reid was the head of the Senate, and he's from Nevada. And he was able to fold that into a defense bill, and it had quite a portion of land for becoming a wilderness. And so that got through. You don't have that kind of backing today, and we don't have Harry Reid as the leader of the Senate. The other thing I'd mentioned that Hudbay knew that's coming up. Why didn't they have a map on the board that shows what they want? They've been working around this thing for over 2 years now. And they put forth a map with 41,250 acres. And that map shows 8,000 acres over in Douglas County. Douglas County doesn't even know about this. I've talked to people from there, their director of planning and their former commissioner, Jacques Echegoyen. And so I'd like to see the proper map. But lastly, I don't think that we should be in bed with Hudbay or any mining company. It's been said earlier that they can go this route on their own, apply to the BLM. Once that land becomes private, it's gone forever. And since they don't need to have the county pushing them into a lands bill or helping them with a lands bill, let them just apply to the BLM and get their permits. The man from RCI stated that even if it becomes private property, they'd still be under the state's management. But he didn't say they'd still have to be under the federal management. We have Anaconda Mine right down the road, which is a Superfund site. And the water under that mine will never be cleaned up, according to state water engineers I spoke with this year. We don't need that kind of situation in Lyon County over in Smith Valley. Now you say, well, the laws are stricter now. The laws are stricter now. We won't have that problem. But if you gut the laws by giving a lands bill, which circumvents the federal laws, then they aren't stricter now. And the chances of that happening in Smith Valley are increased. I thank you for your time.
And boy, you were right on point for that 3 minutes.
Good. Oh,
Thank
by
you,
the
Mr.
way,
Kittinger.
we now have 9 puppies.
Oh, boy. All right, I have a Mr. John Turner, looks like.
Yes, hello. So my name is John Turner, and I live in Smith Valley. Been here for about 5 years. I want to say it's always great to see, our process in action. And I always appreciate that I live in a country where every citizen has an opportunity for input in the process and to have their voices heard. So thank you for that. Personally, I'm an electrical engineer, so I definitely understand the value of copper and of mining, and I don't really intend to question that. I also understand that's not what we're discussing here. And it does certainly seem to me that the economic impact of a mine could be to the public benefit, creating good jobs, enhancing the tax base, funding infrastructure improvements. And in Smith Valley, we've already seen the good and bad of development like that with the Smith Valley Dairy, because there have been issues with light and odor and noise pollution, but also there's been positive economic impact. The fields are green, providing silage to the herd. And we now have reliable power because of the new electrical substation that Smith Valley never had. So, there are definitely benefits that you get from that. So my concern is us advocating the unnecessary transfer of public lands to a foreign company that may not ever use them, and forever eliminating the access for future grazing, hunting, recreation, and other legitimate uses that are in the public interest. And I look forward to further discussion on that, because I do see the lands bill as being the expressed opinion of Lyon County on what we would like to see happen. And right now, I'm not sure that it reflects my opinion. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Andrew, is there any other hands? I'm not seeing any.
I see one more on Zoom. Bonnie.
Oh, okay, I see. There you are, Bonnie.
Yeah, I'm new to the area and I'm not sure what all the different mines are and what have you. But purchasing private land for a community that possibly can go to a foreign entity, I just want to say that I am in support of the people that are not in support of this land grab. So that's all I have to say.
Bonnie, can you do me a favor and state your full name and possibly spell it for the clerk?
It's Bonnie Kaufman, and that's Bonnie, and the last name is Kauf like Frank, Man, and I'm from Dayton.
All right, thank you very much, Bonnie. Okay, I'm scrolling through one more time, Andrew. I'm not seeing any other hands.
No other hands.
Okay, and as you know, this was a presentation and report, so no action will be taken. So thank you, everybody, for your comments today. We're going to move on real quick to item 20B, just to get it off the agenda. For possible corrective action at the Lyon County Commission meeting held November 3rd, 2022, and agenda item 18A, the board approved a motion to extend Dr. Titus' contract to serve as the Lyon County Public Health Officer for 2 years at $1,000 per month, with the stipulation that county staff would begin working on bringing back the public health ordinance for changes and approval, and a $4,800 transfer from contingency to cover the additional cost of the contract. Agenda 18A on November 3rd, 2022, agenda stated for possible action to review and set the qualifications, duties, and salary of the public health officer, and to discuss and provide direction to staff on whether to advertise for the position of public health officer that was requested by me, Commissioner Keller. The agenda item 18A did not include specific language authorizing the board to extend the contract with Dr. Titus. Therefore, the agenda did not specifically authorize the board to extend the contract. The board did set the salary and decide not to advertise, which is stated clearly on the agenda. Implicit in the decision not to advertise is approval of the contract extension. For this agenda item, the board will consider the possible extension of the contract for public health officer between Lyon County and Dr. Robin Titus for a prior, I don't think that was word. Anyways, for 2 years beginning January 1st, 2023 at $1,000 per month with a transfer from contingency of $4,800 to cover the additional costs for FY23. So at this time, do we have any discussion? If not, I will accept a motion to accept Dr. Titus's contract.
Madam Chair, I would like to move that we extend the contract for Dr. Robin Titus to act as our public health officer for 2 years, beginning January 1, 2023, at a salary of $1,000 per month.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Again, any further discussion? Do I have any public comment? Seeing
None in
none-
chambers.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I said none in chambers.
Okay, sorry, we talked over each other. Okay, I do have one hand up. Tony?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this time I am speaking as the chair of the Lyon County Democrats. While we support Dr. Titus's continued run as our county health officer, we do want to know, while she's in session, will she still be paid her salary from the county? And the reason this question came about is because there have been issues with other legislators, mostly Democrats, being challenged on them taking their county salaries while they're in session. So that's my question to the board.
Okay, and at this time, this is public comment, but Andrew, if it's up to you as our county manager, if you would like to address that question.
I think Mr. Foley's gonna speak to this one.
Thank you, Mr. Foley.
Josh Fuller, Lyon County Comptroller, for the record, just so everyone is aware, this is not an item to do a W-2 employee relationship with Dr. Titus. This is to do an independent contractor contract. And so I think that is significantly different than what the question was. So I just want to make sure everyone realizes this will be paid $1,000 per month, every month under the term of the contract, regardless of what the independent contractor does in the legislature. It has nothing to do with that particular piece.
Thank you, Mr. Foley. Any other public comment? I'm not seeing any more hands. Okay, so all those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, quick question. I'm not there, but I want you to please consider the staff. When would you like to break for lunch? Any comment from any of the?
Madam Chair, whenever you call it is fine with me.
Ditto.
Okay, well, it's almost noon now. Why don't we go ahead and call lunch and then we can come back and finish this up. So that would put us, an hour is good for everybody, right? So we
Yes,
could,
Madam Chair.
okay, so we can resume back here at 12:48. There you guys are. I kept looking at the screen, waiting for everybody to get back. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you. We are
Oh, okay.
We're
I
ready
made a
when you are.
comment, nobody responded. I'm like, okay, I must be on mute.
No, we just put you on mute.
Oh, okay. Well, fine, be that away. Anyways, so we're gonna call this meeting back to order once again. Double checking all my check marks on my agenda here. Okay, let's finally get to those Commissioner County Manager reports. Let's start with Commissioner Jacobson.
Madam Chair, thank you. An opportunity to tour Weinberg Industries in Mound House. They manufacture parts from Tesla to NASA, prosthetics, absolutely just fantastic tour and was unbelievable. And then just want to again thank our veterans and current military. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Hockaday.
Well, I'd like to thank Dustin Holman. I called him up and asked him for some help with Hoy Canyon Road traffic control. I said he's going to work on getting some signs out there because people are driving like idiots and pretty fast. There aren't any speed signs out there or anything else that tells people to slow down other than common sense, which isn't common when they're driving out there on that road. Also Andrew, because he took me on a tour about a week and a half ago. We went ahead and had discussions about code enforcement and some of the efforts and things going on with actions, law enforcement and the DA. As far as some of the areas that are needing to be cleaned up. So I do appreciate his time and efforts in driving me around and showing me all the different locations that need some work. Also Doug Homestead, he did a super job out in Smith Valley, coordinating the work at the park to make sure that we got the old asphalt torn out and new asphalt put in for the tennis and pickleball and basketball court, so that we have some more activities for the youth and for some of us adults out there for exercise. One last thing would be, if you haven't seen it already, the Nevada Division of Environmental Protection is going to be hosting a meeting on December 15th to provide a project status update on the Anaconda Copper Mine cleanup. It'll be at between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. on that date at the City of Yerington Public Works Building, located at 14 East Goldfield Avenue, known as Joe Parr Way. So that's something that if you're interested in how that cleanup is going on, to do something with all that dead earth that's piled up out there, see what's going to go on with that, please be aware and mark your calendars. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have a whole lot this time. I do want to report that we did host a SLUPAC meeting in this room last Thursday. I want to thank our staff for helping set that up. And also Louis Carriola gave a presentation on, what's going on out here in Lyon County. So I think that was very well appreciated. One of the items on the SLUPAC agenda was review and approval of a letter to the director of the Bureau of Land Management. The state BLM has announced a plan to do a statewide resource management plan, which would replace the 11 or so that are currently in existence. It's a very good letter. We approved it. It hasn't been signed yet. Once it's signed and we get a copy of it, I will probably be bringing that as an agenda item for this board to consider sending a similar letter to the director of the Bureau of Land Management. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. First of all, what I would like to do is I would like to recognize former County Commissioner Greg Honeywell, which our chambers are named after. Today would have been his 65th birthday. So I'd like to wish former Commissioner Honeywell a happy heavenly birthday. Just wanted to point that out since our chambers are named after him. And then I want to, it's kind of an announcement really, but remind everybody December 10th that we are having our tree lighting at the senior center in Silver Springs. And along with that, and the reason why I'm bringing up that tree lighting again is due to the outcome of, the ballot questions that were passed in our election. Central Lyon County Fire got theirs passed, and as a thank you to the communities in Central Lyon, they're going to be holding a couple of different chili feeds, and they've decided to have the one in Silver Springs right prior to our tree lighting. So anybody that wants to come to Silver Springs that afternoon from 12 to 4, they can tour the firehouse on Spruce Street, get free chili, great conversation, and then from there they can go to the senior center and hang out for dessert, which will be hot cocoa and cookies and the tree lighting. So we're combining those two efforts in the same day. So that's really all I wanted to put out there today. So Mr. Haskin, County Manager's Report.
Andrew Haskin for the record, thank you. I'll keep my comments pretty brief today. So we had our second meeting of the Code Enforcement Task Force. It went pretty well. Been brainstorming some different ideas and kind of trying to figure out what our priorities are going to be. I think most of the members on the task force agree that we are going to have to look at some code amendments coming up on some of the code enforcement items. So stay tuned for that. I'll be working on getting those put together. Probably hopefully we'll have those sometimes after the first of the year. I don't want to push those out too far. I also had a meeting with the Carson River Sub-Conservancy and the contractor that they have selected for the Stagecoach Area Drainage Master Plan. We are going to be doing a area drainage master plan for Stagecoach, similar to what we did in Dayton for the north and south plans. We are also going to be doing, this is through a grant with the Sub-Conservancy, or that the Sub-Conservancy got, but we'll be putting together a plan for North Silver Springs as well. So but anyway, I attended the meeting for the Stagecoach Area Drainage Master Plan project, and look forward to getting that going. I think that having those plans in place so that we know what direction we need to move in with different drainage projects is a really big help. Also, we possibly identified a funding source for the engineering on the second bridge in Dayton. I hope to have more information on that soon. It would be really nice to get that project moving forward. Once completing the engineering work on that is kind of the first step in being able to apply for federal dollars to get that thing built. So we're seeing some progress on that. And then I wanted to introduce our new senior planner, Bill Roth, today. He was going to be on Zoom, and I don't know, it looks like he may not have come back after lunch. So I will have to give him another chance at a later date. I'm sure he'll probably be here in person for the December 1st meeting to kind of introduce himself. I was going to call him up and just let him do that. So anyway, that is my report. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions for the county manager?
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Elected official reports. Do we have any elected officials in chambers? Because I can't see who's sitting in the back.
No.
I don't see any.
Okay, I don't think we have any online either.
I see Troy and Nikki online. I don't know if they have reports.
Well, they're not putting their hands up, so I think we're okay. So appointed official reports. Anybody?
They're
Looks
headed
like
to
we
the
have
microphone.
two.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Eric Malawski, HR Director. 2 items to give you guys a heads up on that are coming down the pike next month. The first is We'll have an agenda item coming on regarding our employee benefits brokers contract. That contract historically is run on a 1-year basis from July 1 through June 30. The contract that we're in for the present year was approved back in April. And you guys may recall, we had some discussion at that time about the amount of the commission. I went back and did some renegotiating with our broker and came back with an amendment that reduced the commission in May of this year. And at the time, I remember telling you guys that because there had been some discussion about possibly RFPing for the service as well, that we're not legally required to RFP. I don't think that RFP would necessarily be in the county's best interest. The one sentence summary of my justification there is that going cheap on a broker would cost us more in the long run. And would also diminish the value that our employees get out of the insurance when there are issues with coverage and things like that. But I remember saying at the time that I'll bring forward a more detailed presentation at the end of the calendar year, so that I have all the data and you guys can see it. I'll try to keep it to like 10 minutes so that we're not talking about insurance for too long, but particularly if we're not going to RFP, it's probably something that's good to have open to the public to show why we're going with this broker and the value we're getting there. If you do want me to RFP, then we're ahead of the game for this year and we'll have plenty of time to do that as well. So that's coming up next month. The second thing is just a reminder that we've got our annual holiday party at the second meeting in December. And so that's a meeting where the agenda has traditionally been kept pretty short, so that we can all be over there by 11:30 or so, enjoying the food and music and so on. And Commissioner Keller, ma'am, I think one of your final acts will be to give the speech as board chair, since that's been the tradition.
Yay.
So that's the second thing. So that's it for me. Thank you.
That means that the rest of you commissioners better be ready, because when I do my speech at the Christmas dinner, I always allow each one of you to make a speech as well. I don't take the stage by myself. So be prepared. I will call on you. Next, I can't see them. Did we push that lectern further back than it used to be, or is it the camera?
No, I think it actually moved.
I think we need a new camera system.
Well,
Which way you want it to go?
Duly noted, Commissioner Henderson. Anyways, but yeah, for anybody that's on Zoom, just so Andrew, you know, we used to be able to see who was standing there. We no longer can see who walks up there.
we'll get it moved back.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, David Burketta for the record. As you recall, toward the end of last year, beginning of this year, we had some a main water line break a couple times in Dayton, and that led to 2 of the largest precautionary boil order notices that we've had in Dayton. So we hired Far West as our utilities engineer to take a look at that and make some recommendations and solutions. The report came out this week. In the summary, the recommendation is that we do not connect to the line. It's currently off. That the line be replaced. It's roughly the lower half of the line, that the total distance on this line is roughly a mile, but they're recommending the lower 1/3 be replaced at this time. The estimated cost is going to be about $1.5 million for the replacement of that. There are still questions on the upper half, although we don't have breaks at this point, so they're not recommending replacement at this time. The result for the problem is there wasn't one single problem associated with it. It wasn't operations related, but it's a combination of likely installation issues, combination of it being JM pipe, and that was associated with the JM pipe lawsuit many years ago. So we're not out of the woods on the upper half, but at this point we don't have any brakes on it, so we're going to stick to the lower half. That does impact some current development that is looking to go into that area. So more than likely, we've been in communication with the developer. This is no surprise to them. More than likely, we'll be talking to them. They'll either have to wait for us to replace the line. They won't be able to connect to it for their developments, or they'll have to enter in some type of a reimbursement agreement that would be done pursuant to our code. And then they would actually install that section of the line so they can move forward with their development. So those are ongoing conversations, but since that report came out, I just want to give you an update on it. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Burketta? Thank you. Okay, any other,
Too.
oh, I see hands.
Mr. Foley's here too.
Hi, Josh.
Josh Fuller, Lyon County Comptroller for the record. I wanted to update the board a little bit on the Justice Complex for District Court remodel. And we are at 100% design, so Mr. Homestead is taking that out to building permit to the city and to the fire district to get that moving. I believe the fire district is gonna have the state fire marshal's office do their portion of the review. Once that's complete, we will bring it back to the board to go out to bid, or we'll go out to bid, we'll bring it back to the board to award the bid. Just so you're aware on that process. The Dayton Government Complex, we have a private developer that wants us to look at their property in Dayton and see if it may be a better fit. And so we're doing some due diligence on that. We have the conceptual design complete, but we need to finalize for sure where the site's going to be. So once we've done some further analysis, we'll bring that back to the board and give them some information. I think that's all I have, other than the audit will be the second meeting of December as well. I'll bring that report to you. Bring your pillows, take a nap, and we'll get through it together.
Can you present that during lunch? So
Oh,
So for Christmas, you're giving us an audit? What I'm hearing, Mr. Foley?
And we're gonna have a line item by line item review, correct?
that's my understanding is what the board wants is every line item and take it through Christmas. Now, the statute requires by the end of December for me to present that to you. It won't be available for the first meeting in December because it's December 1st. So we're still working on tying up the ends of the audit. That only gives me one other meeting, unless you would prefer to meet on Christmas Day. We can arrange that as possible.
you're pushing it, Josh.
That's
Any
all.
questions for Mr. Foley? Boy, you guys are all getting off easy today. Any other appointed officials that I can't see?
None in chambers.
All right. And I don't remember seeing any online. Or at least not with their hands up. Okay. Advisory board reports. Please note that we have a Stagecoach Advisory Board in our packets. So do we have any advisory board reports today? Again, I'm not seeing any hands.
None in chambers.
Okay. All right, consent agenda. Action will be taken on all items. All matters listed on the consent agenda are considered routine and may be acted upon by the Board of County Commissioners with one action and without an extensive hearing. Any member of the board or any citizen may request that an item be taken from the consent agenda, discussed and acted upon separately during this meeting. I want to please note we've had several requests to pull 16G for separate consideration. Do we have any others?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda 15A through 18D, pulling 16G.
Second.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Any public comment? Seeing none, all in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, 16G. For possible action to approve a master services agreement amendment number 1 to extend the end date from June 30th, 2022 to June 30th, 2023 for technical support for development of a conceptual county lands bill and on public lands and natural resources support with Resource Concepts Incorporated. Mr. Haskin, I believe you're up there.
I am, yes. Andrew Haskin, for the record, interim county manager. So, yeah, this is for a contract extension. You remember previously the board had awarded this contract, but it had an expiration date of it's on here, June 30th
June 30th.
22, and so this would extend this out through June 30th of 2023. It doesn't change it does not change the amount of the contract. We've already spent about $12,000 out of this contract. It's a time and materials, so they bill us as we use ours. So by granting this extension, we're not granting them the $59,000 automatically. It would just be billed as we use their services. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Haskin? Can I get a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve Master Services Agreement Amendment number 1 to extend the end date from June 30th, 2022 to June 30th, 2023 for technical support for the development of the Conceptual County lands bill and on public lands and natural resource issues with Resource Concepts Incorporated.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Any public comment on this item? Andrew, anybody in chambers?
Yes, there's one. If you do have public comment, please line up against the wall.
Okay, same rules apply. Please state your name for the record as well as sign in, and you have 3 minutes.
Yes, Leslie Sine, Smith, Nevada. I don't see any need to continue paying a consultant for a lands bill that you've been told is essentially a no-go at this time. You were told at the September meeting that other paths to get the land you want for county projects would likely be easier than going through a lands bill process, even being told that several other jurisdictions are on their 3rd and 4th attempts, presumably over years, and various federal administrations and costing more and more for consultants and staff time. The public discussion on the future of the lands bill has not occurred, and therefore there has been no decision as to the future of this proposed lands bill. You must have this public discussion first before extending a contract. Stop paying a consultant for a lands bill that will not get off the ground and have staff focus on getting federal land for county projects via other means, the administrative process as mentioned by Mr. Drew. Let private companies foot their own bill and go through their own process and let them take on the headache of an unhappy community. I was informed by Mr. Haskin this morning that there are no existing records explaining the need for any of the land or justification for the requests. If you do vote to extend the contract, before spending another dime, please get this background information and release it to the public to ensure full transparency if this bill is to continue moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else, Andrew?
There's one more.
This is Judith Harker from Wellington, and I have 2 short things to comment on about the contract. The first case, the proposed contract amendment with RCI, the client is Lyon County. The contract has been and will be paid with our taxpayer money as directed by the Board of County Commissioners. And you represent us. We are Lyon County. We are then actually the client named in the contract. And with the Board of County Commissioners acting for us as our representatives. I think we as taxpayers have every right to the information from RCI and communications between RCI and our representatives and employees of the county. And since RCI has previously refused to answer questions from the public, I think our right to this information should be understood and made explicit in the contract. The second thing I want to comment on is Jeff Page, as county manager, has promised that the county would hold at least 4 public meetings regarding the lands bill. And, locations were not made explicit at the time, but it was sort of understood they would be in Smith Valley, Yarrington, Dayton, and Silver Springs. The purpose would be to get public comment and feedback. And since RCI is representing preparing the draft lands bill, they would logically be part of those meetings, but that doesn't appear in the contract anywhere. I like to clarify or get clarification that they would be that would be included as part of their contract obligations under scope of work or someplace where it's appropriate. Thank you.
Okay, is that it in chambers?
No, ma'am.
Looks like there's one more.
Hi, Mary Ann Seacheck for the record. This landfill information that's been provided today has been excellent from both opinions, both support. And I really appreciate that the folks who are affected are here and making a presentation. I do however, feel that most of their questions and most of their concerns have been addressed. And I recommend that the commissioners, who are not all experts on this question, find out what the experts say on this question, and I encourage you to go forward with this contract.
Thank you, Mary Ann. Do we have any others?
None in chambers. I see one online.
Mr. Kinninger.
Madam Chair, thank you. Jim Kenninger from Smith Valley. First, a puppy update. We now have 11 puppies. Could you believe it?
Wow.
So that said, anybody who needs an Aussie Shepherd type breed, let us know. I think the contract with RCI regarding Hudbay should be cut out. Our public money shouldn't be used to help private enterprise in this fashion. They can go to the BLM, as I mentioned earlier. At an early Smith Valley Advisory Council meeting this year, the chairperson at that time didn't want to form a committee with the citizens to look into this. And she basically said on social media, if the citizens want to create a group of their own, they can go do it. Well, we did. We created the Citizens to Protect Smith Valley. We have a website, smithvalleymine.org, and we've collected over 300 signatures on petitions, and we're going to get more that say don't use our public land for this mining operation. So I continue to ask you to back away from Hudbay. They didn't even show up with a proper map today, so we can't even really discuss it. But the size of what they want isn't the real question. It's whether they should even continue to pursue, or you should continue to pursue a lands bill for this private enterprise. So I just encourage you to reconsider and back away from getting our public land for mining operation. They can do it on their own. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kinninger. Mr. Turner.
Yes, I think that the comment on the Board of County Commissioners needing advice, from people with expertise makes a lot of sense. The question that I would have is whether RCI has been a good steward of the trust that the Board of County Commissioners has placed in them, because I've seen a lot of discontent expressed around it, and I kind of echo it. And so, I think the question is whether or not you endorse and support that RCI is doing the right thing and you're happy with them by extending their contract, or do you say, you know what, this is a time for us to take a step back and decide whether or not these folks are the right partners for us. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Madam Chair, looks like we have one more in chambers.
Okay.
Donna Smith, Wellington, Smith Valley. It seems to me, given all of the conversations we've had about the lands bill, most of it centering on Hudbay, little discussion about the north end. The north end of the county, the pieces that are in there seem to be well mapped out, know exactly what is wanted and needed by the county. And that certainly could move forward, as I don't recall in any meeting, any discussion from anybody protesting that activity. So if you were to postpone the contract, that would give you an opportunity to, if you decide, pull Hud Bay and go forward. You could do that in a short period of time. Whereas if you approve it now, some money will probably be spent by RCI trying to figure out what it is that Hud Bay wants when they've already, I guess, given us two maps that aren't show exactly what it is they want. So why spend the money for that? And I would point out, as Judy Harper pointed out, that's taxpayer money. Sure you're aware. Thank you very much.
Okay, Andrew, is that it?
That is.
Okay, so before we go to vote, I just want to clarify something. If you actually read the agenda item, and I do appreciate all public comment. I love getting public comment. This contract has already been stated. It's not blanket. We're just going to write them a check. They bill us as we ask them for services. The lands bill was one piece of that. The rest of it is their ability to help us out on public lands and natural resources support. So when you talk about spending the taxpayer dollars, we are the county and we operate off of taxpayer dollars. But we also have to defend the county and we have to have the right people in place to do so. RCI supplies services beyond just putting together a lands bill. So I just want that on the record as a clarification. Again, any further discussion from my board?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Hockaday.
there was a comment made, I remember reading in the packet about the deliverables in phase 2, estimated budget 40,000. It says attendance in person, telephonic or virtual at all stakeholder meetings as appropriate. We haven't had any basic stakeholder meetings with the public. It's one reasons why I would support moving on with the contract, because we could then call on them to have those stakeholder meetings. There's a lot of other reasons why I think, but the 2-year delay and everything else that I look at maybe delaying things to a future date when Congress might be more acceptable. But I just wanted to point that out since it was brought up that nothing was in there about stakeholder meetings, and there actually is in phase 2.
Thank you, Commissioner Hockaday. I actually had that noted and forgot to say that part. But yeah, I just want people to realize this contract is not, one-sided. It's not a singular contract for one thing. So with that being said, if we have a motion and a second to approve, all in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
What was that?
Nay.
Oh, sorry. I thought I heard 3. Okay, so I've got 3-4 and Commissioner Hockaday as a no. Okay, that finishes out the consent agenda. And I'm going to jump forward one more time. Is Nikki available? I saw her a little bit ago.
I believe she just stepped out.
Oh, well, then never mind. I was gonna jump to the canvas, but if she left the room, I will go back to it again later. Okay, so that finishes the consent agenda. We are now going to get back to the regular agenda. 19A for possible action, acknowledge resignation from Bridget Perez from the Silver Springs Advisory Board and advertise for the vacancy.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we accept the resignation from Bridget Perez from the Silver Springs Advisory Board. And thank her for her service. As I know she is a pillar in the Silver Springs community.
Second.
Just to be clear, the agenda item is to acknowledge the resignation. So rather than accept. So you might want to.
I guess we acknowledge the resignation.
Second,
Okay, yeah, and I do want to mention that, I know Bridget Perez is going through a lot with her family right now, and I hope we keep her and her family in our prayers. And in the hopes that maybe someday she will come back to us on the advisory board. So I have a motion and a second to acknowledge her resignation and to advertise for the vacancy. Any further discussion? Public comment? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. 19B for possible action, acknowledge resignation from Jessica Halterman from the Mason Valley Mosquito Abatement Board and advertise for the vacancy.
I'll make a motion to acknowledge the resignation from Jessica Halterman from the Mason Valley Mosquito Abatement Board and advertise for the vacancy.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, now I got a couple of them. Any further discussion? Public comment?
Just
Seeing
thank
none,
you
all
for
in
her
favor?
service.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Yeah, just I wanted to thank her for her participation on that board. She did a good
Oh,
job.
absolutely. Thank you. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Madam Chair, Ms. Bryan in chambers.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Nikki's back in chambers.
Oh, welcome back, Nikki. Now I lost, oh, there it is. Okay, 22A for possible action, approved to canvass the vote from the November 8th, 2022 general election per NRS 293.387. And I also, before Nikki gets going there, I want to note an email came out to the chairman and the board of commissioners. I believe the county manager and Nikki were both copied in, and it's been asked to be attached to the minutes, please. Ms. Bryan.
Okay. You have the canvas, and I don't know how deep you want me to get into it, but you have it in a couple of different ways. You have the summary, and then you also have it by precinct. And the election went well. It's always a challenge to get through it. We had lots of people helping, and there were a few questions, I believe in that. I'm not sure if anybody's going to speak, but Greg, are you going to speak today, or you just? Okay, then I want to answer a question that is that he posed in that letter. I think we're also talking about the same letter. All of the ballots have been counted except the signature cures. And I think there were maybe a little over 100 of those that didn't get cured. And all of the other ballots have been counted. We didn't get very many. We did have some trouble with the night that Greg was there. And I believe that was that election night or the next night? Anyway, whenever it was. We did have a little bit of trouble getting through the ballots on the last batch that we did. For some reason, it was putting, we have to put a number on each ballot. And that's so that when we can pull that particular ballot. And there's no personal information on there, but when we do a risk limiting audit, then we need to be able to pull that particular ballot. And that's a real treat to try to find all of that out, through all of this. But that's the way we did a risk limiting audit for the primary, and the Secretary of State sends us the races and the ballot numbers. And then we pull those ballots and make sure that they were counted the way they were supposed to, and it works out fine, and it really is a good thing. But those numbers were getting on. Did you notice when you had your ballot, there's little squares on each side and then there's squares on the bottom, and those all mean something when the ballot goes through the scanner and gets counted. And those numbers were too close in that margin, and sometimes they were right on those squares, so we ended up having to duplicate all those. I don't think we did all of those in that batch, but we did a whole bunch of them to duplicate them. To duplicate the ballots on the old ballot that isn't scanning, then we write duplicate on that. We keep it with the batch. And then we have two people. In fact, Greg helped us a little bit there at the end, duplicating the ballot and then having somebody else check the ballot to make sure that it's exactly the way it is. And then those get scanned, and then all the numbers still match. But that was really the only little glitch that we had that I am aware of. I know that we had people standing in line in Dayton and Fernley. Yes, we had enough poll workers. We only have so much equipment. And we chose to have it there because it's bigger than Dayton Utilities, but we used to have it at the school. But I just don't feel like the school is secure enough, and especially in today's environment. And so we have it, we've had it the last two elections there at the community center, and it seems to work pretty well. So if you guys have any questions, or if there's any questions from anybody, I'll try to answer those. Otherwise, I think this is pretty well self-explanatory.
Nikki, I did have one question that was actually on that email, and I was actually had the question already. On the Secretary of State's website, it's still showing the last update from Lyon County. I mean, unless it's changed this morning, because I've been doing this and haven't looked. It was still showing the last update as of November 9th.
That was the last update that we did. We did one. We did one last night, and I don't think that they, before we went home from work yesterday. And I don't know that they have that on there or not. I don't know if they have that on there yet or not. But there weren't very many, because at that point we had counted everything else, and we were getting, like that first day after the first day after the election, when we still can get the ballot, which I don't agree with, by the way. I just put that on record. I think that if we can't have everything by election day, then there's a problem. But anyway, we had till Saturday to collect those ballots if they were postmarked. And the problem of it is, a lot of them, you can't even read the postmark. So that's a problem. But that one day that first day we got, I think we got 20 ballots, and 10 of them counted and 10 of them didn't. So there really weren't that many to do another round to put on the Secretary of State side, because none of what we had would have made any difference in any race on the ballot.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting any changes in the races. I'm just was looking for the update. I just noticed that it hadn't updated at all. So, even if that was 10 votes.
Another thing that we were having, and we're still dealing with that, that site, and I think it's on the Secretary of State site. Some people have signed up for ballot tracks. And I don't know that it's always accurate, because then they email me and say, did my ballot count or not? And it says it looks like it's just in processing. And so I look them up, sure enough, yep, it did. And so I don't know. I think it would be better for people to just call us, and we'll be glad to tell them instead of trusting that and then getting all upset. And there's nothing we can do about that. I mean, we don't control that side, of course.
Do we have any other questions for Nikki?
Rick Watson, Wellington, for the record. So just to be clear, Nikki, we should expect to see on the Secretary of State's website a November 15 update from Lyon County at some point.
Mhm.
Okay, so that
Yeah, it was
will
sent
be,
last night,
okay, right, thank you.
because if that had to be done, or we wouldn't be here today.
Yeah, and I want to thank Mr. Clausen for, being a volunteer and helping out. So from the board, do we have any questions for Nikki?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Henderson?
thank you, Madam Chair. Not a question, just a comment. Nikki, I just want to thank you and your entire staff. Herculean job, and you guys do it well every election cycle, and we certainly appreciate your service and those of your coworkers. Thank you.
They are a bunch of rock stars, I gotta say.
Madam Chair, if I may, I'd also want to congratulate you and thank you for everything you've done for Lyon County through the years, Nikki.
Thank you.
You're a wonderful lady.
Thank you.
So Nikki, you're actually leaving, is it 23 elections or 24?
I don't know. I think probably we had a special election when Mark Amadei. I don't remember the particulars of that, so that would be an extra one. So yeah, probably 24, 25.
Jeez.
Wow.
Yeah, 2 every 2 years.
Yeah, I knew the number was up there somewhere.
I still kept coming back for more. What is wrong with me?
Commissioner Hockaday, I didn't mean to skip over you.
That's fine. I just wanted to reiterate my thanks. I can't remember what day I called you, but it was, I think you were swamped and you'd probably been up to midnight. Might have been the day after, but I do appreciate your staff.
Thank you.
I know how they work and how
Yeah.
the process works and how they really get in and make sure that it's right. So I've always felt very comfortable about Lyon County and the way that we get our votes through and counted properly, and you go back and double check and triple check. So I do appreciate all that through the years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe next time I'll be able to work at the polls.
Okay,
Okay.
maybe so.
So we don't have any more questions for Nikki. Can I get a motion?
Where is it?
And here in the
Oh, it's at the very end.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve to canvass the vote from the November 8th, 2022 general election per NRS 293.387.
Second.
Okay, I got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, now we can go to public comment. So do we have any public comment?
None in chambers.
Okay, and I'm not seeing hands. Okay, all in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? Okay, Mickey,
Thank you.
guess it's your last one.
It is.
You're coming back to volunteer, right?
I'm a little excited.
That song breaking up, so we do.
No,
Well,
I'm a lot excited.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that brings us back around, because I jumped forward just a little bit when Nikki came back in. We're now on item 20C. And if you don't mind, Commissioner Hockaday, I'm gonna have you finish out the agenda.
Okay, I guess I could do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, 20C for possible action, direct the county manager to work with Central Lyon County Fire Protection District to acquire the Mound House Fire Station located at 56 Red Rock Road, APN 016-233-06 for the purposes of a community center in exchange for a vacant parcel located at 158 Garnet Circle, APN 016-221-40. That would be the county manager, Mr. Haskin.
All right, Andrew Haskin, interim county manager for the record. Yeah, so this one's pretty straightforward. I know the board had some preliminary discussions, I guess, with the former county manager when this had come up in previous discussions about the Mound House Community Center. And the idea was floated that we possibly use the fire station there, as our understanding is that Central Lyon Fire is willing to move forward with that. So, I was kind of moving in that direction, and District Attorney Rye was like, you probably should bring an item forward before the board to make sure that that is the consensus. And I was like, yep, that's probably a good idea. That other parcel that I had listed in the item is the vacant piece that we had considered for building a community center. If we acquire the firehouse instead, there's no need to build a community center there. The firehouse is also right next door to a park that we already own. So anyway, it would make sense. And that gives them the opportunity to build a new fire station at some point in the future.
Thank you, Commissioner Henderson, since you're up in that neck of the woods.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I would like to move that we direct the county manager to work with Central Lyon County Fire Protection District to acquire the Mound House Fire Station located at 56 Red Rock Road for the purposes of a community center in exchange for a vacant parcel located at 158 Garnet Circle.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, do we have any discussion on this?
Mr. Vice Chair, if I may, not discussion, I just want to point out that this commission did change the zoning on that 2-acre parcel to public purpose so that it is zoned properly for a fire station.
Thank you for bringing that up. Any public comment?
My name is Russ Wright. I live in Dayton. The only question I would have in regards to the vacant property that the interim county manager probably will investigate is, are there contingencies on the gift of that vacant property to the county that it be used for a community center that might hinder trading it to the fire district? And I use as an example, when the state of California was trying to save money under the budget under Governor Schwarzenegger, he decided to close state parks. The money-making state park in the state of California is Hearst Castle. And he was going to close that, only to discover that when it was gifted to the state, there was a provision in the gift that if Hearst Castle ever closes for more than 5 days, other than an act of God, it reverts back to the Hearst Corporation. So of all the state parks that were scheduled to be closed, that quickly came off the docket. So it might behoove the county manager to make sure there are no contingencies that we swap a piece of property that goes back to whoever gave it to us in the first place.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Andrew Haskin for the record again. Yeah, so we've already done that research on the parcel that we already own, and that is not a contingency on that one. There was some rumors that it was, but there, as far as I can tell, there's nothing in the deed on that one. There is actually one on the firehouse, and we will have to address that one. So that's kind of part of this.
Any further questions, comments up here? Nope. Okay, we've got a motion and a second. We'll vote.
Public
All those in
comment,
favor?
public comment.
Oh, didn't I just do that with Russ?
Oh, yeah, never mind. I'm sorry.
There's public comment. I mean, is there any other further public comment again?
I don't
Great.
see any.
Super. Nothing on the board. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Didn't think so. All right, that passes. Utilities, we have Mr. Panda. Got a presentation only update. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Commissioners. For the record, Kishore Panda, Utilities Engineer.
I'll present status update on the utilities projects since we reported in last September. I will for a second. I apologize, it looks very small on the screen. Okay, we have this information in the packet. I'll try to make it a little bigger next time so everybody can see it. So here is a summary of all the total of 10 projects right now we have in the utilities department. One thing I want to bring to your attention that it used to be all capital projects, so we began adding some non-capital projects such as engineering studies, engineering investigations. The reason behind that, like Mr. Bruchetta told about that 14-inch water main break. So such type of studies may lead to a capital project afterwards. So we would like to update and keep the board in the loop so that we can bring in all these studies into the presentations. So that's all the change I have on the summary. So if we can take a look under the pre-design and planning, project number 3, 4, 5, they are kind of engineering investigation type of non-capital projects. Other than that, these are all projects we have been doing for a while. There are 5 projects in the planning stage or pre-design. There are 2 projects in design phase. There are 2 projects in construction, and we finished 1 project in last 2 or 3 months. Next slide, please. So next, each slide I dedicated for each one project. So I will basically bring your focus into some of the lines that are highlighted. If you can scroll down a little bit. So most of the informations are carrying over from the previous report. So I basically try to highlight those sections that are kind of new status update on the projects. So this project is for the Highway 50 sewer line replacement phase 2. This is along the Highway 50 corridor next to the Dayton Valley Road. We have been changing for 2 easements so that we can replace this line, which is in a very bad condition. So far, with those 2 property owners, one of them is on the left side or the south side of Highway 50 next to Dayton Valley Road, which is Sinclair gas station. We have come to an agreement to get a permanent easement for this property. So that's a good news. We are still working on getting a temporary easement so that we can bring the equipment to do the construction over there. The line is pretty deep, so that 20 feet of permanent easement will not be enough to do the construction for a sewer line that is as deep as I think 15 to 16 feet deep over there. So we are still working with the property owner to get a temporary easement. Hopefully we'll get something in that direction pretty soon. The other property is Sabria's property. We are also in discussion with property owners. So the discussions are going well. Hopefully we'll get something pretty soon on that. So once we get those 2 easements, I think we are waiting for last almost more than 6 to 9 months now. So we'll move to the next phase, the design phase. Next slide. This is your model development. We have been working on this to develop a hydraulic model so that operations as well as new developments can be analyzed properly. Last 4 months, we completed 7 manhole sewer flow metering by a third-party contractor. So we finished that flow monitoring in September. Right now, I think Far West is working on the models. We're expecting to see the draft model and some presentation in December. Next one, please. So this is the 14-inch water main break that we had Mr. Bruchetta just mentioned some moment ago. This is called Copper Canyon 14-inch water main investigation Far West did for us. Some of the recommendations I think already covered, but this is one of the example of a non-capital projects, go through the engineering investigation. It may lead to a capital project in the future. So as you can see, I think on the right-hand side, there is a blue line going on in front of the Riverview Elementary School. to somewhere on the upper mid right-hand corner, that's about 1,600 linear foot of pipe. That is a high priority, must be replaced as part of this project to basically mitigate those two breaks we had in last couple of years. The upper side of that section, which is another 2,900 linear foot of pipe, probably it's a second priority, but that's up to the county to consider if we go for that or not. The first part is estimated to be around $1.2 million cost, but the second part is a little higher, about $2.2 million. Next one. This is Silver Spring, a general improvement district effluent disposal preliminary engineering report. This is another engineering study. Basically, the purpose was to make some alternative arrangements for the effluent disposal. As we see, the current disposal practices are not sustainable. We have been basically disposing into, they called it a sod farm. Basically, we send the effluent for the irrigation purpose. So to make this effluent disposal sustainable, basically we are exploring other options. So one of the options is, or could be a rapid infiltration basin that similar to that we have in other sites. So this study is going on now. So we are approaching one owner in that area, basically to get the permission to do the geotechnical studies. If that site is feasible, probably that's going to be a potential RIP site. We're also evaluating other disposal options. So hopefully soon we'll bring the outcome of this study and present the report to the board. Next one, please. This is a stormwater project. We call it SIP Camp Dam Geotechnical Assessment. Again, Far West and CME, a geotechnical consultant, they have been doing the study on this project. Basically, some of the backgrounds maybe I can highlight here. In 2021, Department of Dam Safety identified this dam as a high hazard and the condition being poor. CME, the geotechnical consultant, they did a study, and one of their findings is that this is something that we need to bring back to the state and discuss how this is classified as a high hazard. There is no permit required when this was constructed back in 2005. So I think the next step, we are going to have a discussion with the state to basically reclassify and reconsider how it can be taken care of. The other aspect that came out, part of the recommendation from the CME, the consultant, is because we don't have documentation with regards to the construction, how the dam was built, and there is no quality control document, so we cannot fully justify that the integrity of the dam is still good, in a good set. So the recommendation is some of the things we have to repair. If we don't find any engineering documentation for that spill material that was used on the dam or embankment, maybe we have to take some portion out, rebuild it. Other conditions that they identified, such as the spillway, there are some cracks and there is a poor condition, we may have to repair it. So depending on our discussion with the state and the Department of Water Resources and Dam Safety, it may become another capital project in the future. Next one. This is the plant expansion we have been pursuing for last few years. So as of date, the design is done 100%. We are ready to bid the project, but we are waiting some progress with regards to the rapid infiltration basin project. As we have been saying, that this project depends on the construction completion of the REAP project, so that we can take some REAPs out of services, we can start construction for this project. One thing I want to bring to the board's attention, that the project cost estimate at about 6 to 7 months back, we estimated about $20 million. With the current market price, as we completed the 100% design, we did another evaluation of the cost. It went up by another $1 million due to the current market condition or material cost increase.
So we have tentatively planned to bid the project in December. And construction, we are going to begin in April. By that time, we have significant construction progress with the REAP project. So this is a construction of 20 months. So the project is going to be completed by November 2024. Next. 10 Mile Hill Water Tank Project. Update on this. This is again 100% document is prepared. We are working with the permitting process right now. As of today, I think we got all the permits cleared. So we are now ready to bid, hopefully within the next couple of weeks. And this is a construction going for 7 months and going to be finished or completed by November 2023. Next one.
Did you say November 2023?
Yeah. Yes. So the construction beginning in May, 7 months, ending in November. Sewer lift station 2 replacement project. This project is in construction since May of this year. We have finished about 54% construction as of September, but unfortunately, this project was stopped construction due to material unavailability. So when we started this project, we are hoping to get rest of the material by July, but in the course of the time, basically everything kind of pushed out month after month. So finally, we stopped the construction, but we have a plan. Good news is we're starting the construction next week. Board approved a change order to extend the time period of completion up to July of 2023. So that was a no cost change order to extend the time of. Aspen Creek Rapid Infiltration Basin. As you can see, the construction is going on full force. The contractor progress is pretty satisfactory. We have done almost all of the pipelines all the way to the Riverview Elementary School, and we are waiting for the winter break to basically complete that rest of the construction in that school area. On the REAP side, I think we are out of the 3 REAPs, we are kind of down to number two and number 3 almost down to the grade. And basically the construction is going pretty well. So we are sticking to the schedule. As you can see, we are very desperate in controlling the dust in that area. We are continuously using the water truck to suppress whatever dust we are generating there. Construction is 7 months. So if everything goes well, we can wrap up this project by May. So that's the reason the plant expansion, we are trying to start construction in April. This one is a project we finished last month. It's a water model update. If you know, last 5 years, we didn't update the model with a lot of changes we had over the last 5 years. So with this update of the model, we are now more confident on interpreting the model analysis and the output, which will basically support the operation as well as the connecting the new developments. We got the model reports last month, so I think we are now very strong in predicting what's going to happen in system changes or modifications. That's all I got. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. Thank you.
No, thank you, Mr. Panda. Looks like we're overproducing effluent in Silver Springs and we got dam safety to worry about. So if there are any other comments from the commissioners here.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Mr. Panda, it's good to see you here in person. No, got to look at the screen and see how. So thank you for being here in person. I really appreciate that. And I just want to make a comment on the Dayton Valley Road Sewer Replacement Project. I am really glad that the negotiations are going well for rights of way so that we can use the least expensive alternative to put that for that pipe replacement. So thank you very much.
And you said that was 16 feet deep over there on the gas station side, yes.
Yeah.
We had some challenges in front of the other side properties because we have they call high dollar value AT&T line. So we had to push the line away from Highway 50 so that we can stay away from that high sensitive AT&T line. So that's why we have to push towards the property owner to get additional easement. And there is a body to remember that site. It is a kind of a structural integrity of that building that we brought a structural engineer. They look at the basement, the structure, that there is a little bit risk, but the confidence we got from the structural engineer that we can do the construction if we get some additional easement from the property owner. So that's good.
Anything else?
Thank you.
That was presentation only, so we will go from there. 23 agenda requests, Commissioner Jacobson.
I know that I've been getting some questions, maybe, I don't know if we're going to have any answers on how to address Commissioner Gray's vacancy, but if we could get an update on that maybe by the next meeting. On what you find out. And if it's nothing, it's nothing. So thank you. That's all I have.
Commissioner Henderson.
Not at this time.
I don't have anything at this time. We have Chairwoman Keller. Do you have anything that you wanted to add since you're still online?
Yeah, I'm just kind of hanging around and doing other things at the same time. I've already sent over a couple of requests to Andrew. And one of those, which I know he'll be reaching out to the commission, is to pull together a special meeting that's a joint meeting between Churchill Commission and Lyon Commission for some presentations on water issues and situations moving forward. And Andrew, I know you're already working on that, so I think that's all I've got at this time.
My only request is a short meeting on December 15th. Okay, make that a short agenda. Commissioner comments? Anything new that you'd like to present? Commissioner Jacobson.
Thank you, Vice Chair Hockaday. Yeah, I'd just like to wish Ken Gray the very best as he moves on to his next chapter, and want to wish everybody a very happy Thanksgiving. That is all I have, sir.
Commissioner Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Ditto on happy Thanksgiving. And I forgot to mention until I was outshone by Commissioner Keller, so I will do it now, that the Dayton tree lighting is going to be December 3rd at the little park right there. I think it's our park, yeah. But December 3rd. I don't know if we're going to have a chili cook-off or not, but I'll have beer in the car, so it's all good.
Commissioner Keller.
Yeah, I believe Commissioner Henderson, you can check, but I believe that the fire department has reached out in conjunction with your tree lighting as well for the second site that they want to open up now that that's passed. So look for that chili on the 3rd. I know that they're trying to coordinate with the tree lightings. And I do believe, Commissioner Jacobson, I was at a meeting that they announced that the tree lighting in Fernley, I believe, is also December 10th, the same night as Silver Springs. So lots of trees getting lit. So I just want to, triple ditto. Everybody have a happy Thanksgiving. As always, eat lots of turkey and take a nap. So other than that, I guess we'll see you guys in December.
Thank you. I just wish the same thing. Everybody have a happy Thanksgiving. And looks like we're down to no closed session today. Final public participation. Anybody have anything final to say to us? Then I think we're at number 27, which is adjourn. Good job.
Thank you, Dave.